I'm fathery.
This is Brian. Oh, sorry.
Let's try that again. I'm fathery.
This is Dave.
This is Brian.
And this is Tex-Trek. And we are live on YouTube for our 100th Tex-Trek podcast.
It's crazy.
Which will be completely error-free.
Now, we already botched that in the first 20 seconds, but that's okay. That's still under par for us.
That's the magic of live TV, y'all.
Yeah. So if we have any problems, if YouTube decides to kick us off, we'll just log back on and start another live stream. But before we get too carried away, we're just going to give everyone a little bit of time to log on and start watching. And Dave and Brian, if you're not already, I'm going to ask you to start recording on Audacity.
I just did, so yeah.
Okay, I'll go
the intro. The botched intro is not immortalized.
Okay, well let's just do the intro again. So, Dave, are you recording?
Yep.
Okay, and let's do like the 1, 2, 3 clap, and then clap on the word clap. So 1, 2, 3 clap. Alrighty, we are synced up, ready to go. Hi, Santi Santo. Good to see you. So take it from the top. I'm Fathery.
This is Dave.
This is Brian.
And this is Tex-Trek. And again, we are live streaming our 100th podcast.
Hell yeah.
Going to give a few minutes for people to log on to the YouTubes and start watching if you are catching us live. And we are all under separate locations because we are doing the responsible social distancing here in Travis/Williamson County, Texas. We are on a shelter-in-place order. So,
I'm actually at Starbase 15.
Starbase 15?
Yeah.
Is that where you are? That's actually located in the Austin, Texas area.
Yeah, well, no, this is it's a holodeck projection of my bookcase behind me and everything, so
that's
I kind of try to make it feel homey.
That's a shitty program. You could create any
resolution
environment, and that's what you did. Well, speaking of being locked up in your own personal holodeck, what have y'all been up to the last few days?
Oh, I just finished running a Star Wars role-playing game right before I logged onto this. So,
you said the words, the other Star words, and you're not supposed to do that, sir.
Oh, all right, yes.
The other Star franchise.
Well, for those who are worried, I alternate between the Forbidden Fruit and Star Trek: The Role-Playing Game, set in 2379, involving the crew of the currently the IKS Krug, but they kind of jump around from ship to ship.
What Brian? What year did Nemesis? What year was that?
That is the same year,
okay,
as quoted in the episode, but that we're about to talk about.
Right. That's true. I'm not good with star dates.
I'm terrible with star dates too, but I have spreadsheets so that I can pretend I'm good at them. So.
I'll say this: between the two Star franchises, they actually fulfill rather different roles, and I do not, in fact, have any issues with anyone being down for one or the other.
They are very different critters.
Yeah,
I think when you start digging down, I mean, one person I saw on the internet summed it up brilliantly by saying that Star Trek is about the importance of doubt and skepticism and taking a second look at things, and Star Wars is about the importance of trusting your instincts and just going.
Okay, yeah, that sounds about right. I'll accept it.
So and once I started looking at it, I was like, yeah, it all is. This is all the best Star Wars and all the best Star Trek is pushing in the complete opposite directions on this issue.
Dave, what about you? What have you been up to while self-quarantining?
I can't talk. I'm posting a link on my Facebook page to our to our very podcast right now, but it's up and running. Let's see. Aside
that's on
from
the Tex-Trek. That's on the Tex-Trek Facebook.
Oh, I don't know. I thought I posted.
I'll get it on there. I'll get it on there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just posting on my own page.
But what have you been up to?
So aside from general anxiety, I've been trying to get out and get a little bit of exercise. It's actually been sort of beautiful weather. You know what I noticed is that among the small silver linings of our very weird situation right now is that there's like a lot more people out walking, whether they're out with pets or they're out with their kids. Everybody seems to be, at least in my neighborhood, kind of generally keeping their social distancing up, and nobody's playing on the playgrounds, but there's a few scattered people around at the pond at the park, and everybody's got some space between them. And when I walk past them, everybody's got like a nice little wave for me. That's kind of a bit of that, hey, we're all in the same boat kind of friendliness to it. So I kind of dig that.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, I have had the same experience with my walks. So
good. That's. I'm glad to hear that. That's somewhat universal, based on our two-person anecdotes.
Yes, there are
that's
also
enough for me to believe it's everywhere.
Lots more people walking too.
Yeah. Beyond that, I've been entertaining myself with survival sci-fi in the form of. I've been playing the video game from a few years ago, No Man's Sky. I'm late to the party on that one, but that's the big sci-fi exploration, open universe, choose your direction, beautiful setting game that was super highly anticipated before it came out. Then everybody hated it when it came out, and then within a year or two, it got patched so notably that it kind of became the game that people had wanted it to be. And I'm super enjoying it. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm about 10 or 12 hours into it. And I've been simultaneously watching a show that I know you and Brian have seen, the Netflix Lost in Space, which is also kind of has that survival sci-fi element. And I've been enjoying it quite a bit.
You make me feel so sad and old. I'm just about to finish Mass Effect 1. You're like, I was late to the party. I'm embarrassed. This game was several years old.
Yeah, my game is 4 years old, and yours is like 12, 15, something years old. I don't know when it was.
Yeah, Mass Effect 1 came out in like 2008. But we got a few people watching, so let's just go ahead and get started. Talk about some Star Trek with the big Picard finale.
All right, nice.
So welcome back, everyone, to the Starship Texas for a very special podcast, our 100th podcast. And
I dressed up for it. I wore a T-shirt.
Yeah, I'm wearing a black Star Trek T-shirt, which is my normal attire.
I also have a Star Trek T-shirt on with a Galaxy-class starship.
I'm afraid I don't have a Star Trek T-shirt on. I have a New Orleans House of Voodoo T-shirt on.
It sounds more Deep Space Nine than anything.
Yeah, I'm trying to represent the sort of the outlaws and scoundrels of the world, Quark and that lot. But yes, also, if my dryer had been working, I probably would be wearing my disco shirt, if nothing else.
Well, no one cares about your laundry situation.
Too late. It's out there.
People have tuned in to hear about the Star Trek Picard season 1 finale, which we are here to discuss.
Yes,
and this is titled "Et in Arcadia Ego Part 2."
I think they should go the whole way and just make the part 2 in Latin as well.
How would you say that?
I have no idea, but I'm sure it'd sound different.
I'm blanking on everything I ever knew about Latin right now.
Does anyone remember what the name of these this episode, part 1 and part 2? Does anyone remember what that means? We talked about it last week.
Yeah.
Like here in Arcadia I dwelt, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
It is even in paradise I am, and it's like it's supposed to be a quote from Death, as if Death was saying that I'm everywhere, even in paradise. But if you are watching us on YouTube live or delayed, either way, we're gonna have like some cool visuals to toggle through and just talk all about this episode that was written by showrunner Michael Chabon. And every time I say his name, I say it differently. And this was directed by Akiva Goldsman. So,
by the way, didn't you say earlier, or like this is off mic, that Chabon has written actively written 10 of the 12 episodes?
Yeah, I think he has a writing credit on all but 2 episodes of the season.
Crazy.
Yeah, I could. There was the one that Kirsten Beyer wrote with the Stardust City Rag episode, and then I think there is one other that his name isn't in the writing credits. I might be wrong. I'll have to double check. I will know for sure when we do our season 1 podcast coming up next for the 101st Tex-Trek podcast.
I guess you can tell that it's him because he continues his injury to the eye motif in this episode.
Yeah, he likes to play
one
around
last plucked eyeball
eyes
in this one. Yeah.
But we're just each going to
You're right about that.
We're each going to take our turn and just give our opening statements on how we felt about this episode in general. Who would like to go first?
Brian would like to go first.
Yes, I would.
I said volunteering him.
I liked it overall. It's not my favorite episode of the season, but I think it sticks the landing well enough that I'm happy with it. I don't know if it was quite the emotional punch that I wanted, but I definitely liked what they did with it overall. There's one niggling detail that is probably the same thing that everybody else noticed that I'm still making up my mind on, but as far as whether or not I like it or not, but clearly I didn't hate it if I can't be sure that I hated it. So yeah.
I wonder I don't know what that detail is specifically. I had some
really
odds and ends that bothered me, but I don't know that there's like one precise thing that I'm like,
yeah, I thought there was one thing that was like, okay, all of fandom who's watching is going to have an opinion, good or bad, on this particular.
Well, maybe it'll be obvious when you say it.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
Yeah,
when we get into
but
it.
Overall, good job pulling all of that together and landing with only a few unanswered questions. Though I do have a few unanswered questions that I think are reasonably big and not just nitpickies. But yeah, overall, quite enjoyed it. Quite looking forward to season 2. I think this might be the best run of 10 episodes in a row without a stinker in Star Trek history, even if I still prefer some other seasons overall.
I don't see how anyone can say that, knowing that Deep Space Nine season 6 is a thing. But that's Brian's opinion, and he's entitled to it.
Can you get 10 episodes without a Ferengi episode? Maybe
Ferengi ones are good.
No, they're not.
For a Mirror Universe episode, I know Brian's not a big fan.
Oh yeah, he hates the Mirror Universe.
Yes.
Mirror Universe Brian loves those though.
Yeah, well, yes.
Well, we'll get Mirror Universe Brian into the podcast at some point. I'm going to jump in and say that I actually am probably in a similar place to Brian and overall, and it was somewhat what I anticipated when I was watching the part 1 of this, which was that I would feel emotional during the final episode, and that there would be like emotional beats I was really into, and I was. But that the plot stuff would kind of leave me a little bit cold. I sort of knew as they were getting into the final stuff that I wasn't hugely invested in the plot, and there was a few. I sort of felt like they were a little bit forcing square pegs into round holes as they were trying to get all their ducks in a row. I'm using all the metaphors here. So to everything lined up for the big finale. And I felt the manipulation more often than I would have liked in the final episode. But I just did my second viewing yesterday, and I did warm to it more on the other one, or on the second viewing, as I often do, and ended up moderately happy with it, and also feeling that it was a reasonable place for these characters to end up, that I'm pretty happy with where people are, and I felt like the episode was strongest when it's funny when it was being a little fan servicey, with Riker or Data or some of those other big moments.
Cool. Well, I don't think I feel completely dissimilar from the two of y'all, but hopefully I worded a little bit differently to create the illusion of some varying.
Well, for sure, as we start dissecting it, that'll happen.
Yeah. But I'm largely satisfied with this season finale. I think the episode itself contains some issues that I have problems with, and there are a few kind of dangling threads that didn't get addressed like I would have liked. But overall, the broad strokes of this conclusion I am satisfied with. There was actually some pretty high highs in this episode, but like I said, I did have like a few problems here and there. I think one of them might be the same thing that Brian is thinking of, but the basic story of season 1, I thought, okay, I was really hooked in early on. I enjoyed the ride, and for the most part, this thing stuck the landing for me, although not as pretty as I would have liked it to. I think if you've been having a good time with Picard, you're probably still having a good time after watching this episode. I think if you haven't been digging it, you're still not going to be digging the show. I don't think this one episode, being the finale, I don't think it did anything to really sway anybody in one direction or the other.
I think that's probably true.
Yeah. If you spend 9 episodes foreshadowing how your thing is going to end, there's not a lot of room for massive twists and surprises that are going to change your point of view on things.
But there was a little bit of subversion in here that I got to give them credit for, but we'll get into that. I'm just going to give everyone the short answer and explain what happened in this episode very briefly, and then we'll go into it basically scene by scene in great detail and really flesh it out. But the short answer, Soji and the Siths want to kill all organic life in the galaxy to save themselves from the mean Romulans coming to kill them. The mean Romulan fleet shows up. Picard talks Soji out of killing all organics. Riker and the good guy fleet show up. The mean Romulan fleet leaves. Picard dies from his brain abnormality. Picard meets Data in cyber limbo. Picard says goodbye to Data, gets resurrected into a new synth body, and Data is released from cyber limbo. And La Sirena takes off into the sunset with the whole crew on board to eventually come back in season 2.
All right.
Sounds about right. That was a very short answer. I liked your summation there.
Yeah, I tried to just take every plot point and put it into one sentence and just knock it out in one paragraph.
I don't know, but you missed that Seven kicked Narissa down a space well.
That's not a relevant plot point, but that is something that we will discuss.
Very relevant to Seven.
Those are like, to me, those are like the two prettiest girls on the show, and I had mixed feelings watching their fight because I really like both of them.
They're like, this is hot. No, down the well.
But
yeah,
we'll go into things in a lot more detail now. Starting with this Borg cube, what will become the death place of Narissa, where we see picking up from last week.
I want to call out. I said there would be a trailer for Discovery. There was a trailer for Discovery. It was a teaser sting thing, but it was there.
Yeah, we're just saying coming soon. With
well, it had what's her name with the Federation flag, right?
Yeah, that's actually how it started. So we did get that. Brian called that last week. Go back and check the tape. We have that on record.
Yeah, I noticed y'all left me out last week, of course. Much like trying to put a hit from Jojo Krakow on Bella Oxmix. Y'all tried to take me down, but I'm back.
Yes.
Well, we had some technical difficulties, and Dave was present for the first 2 attempts at the 99th Tex-Trek podcast. He didn't make it to the third attempt.
Apparently, at some point, he decided we just didn't know what the hell we were doing, and we weren't worth the effort.
By the way, this shot you've pulled up, Fathery, I did think that's actually a really beautiful shot of the Borg cube reflecting in the lakeside, just on a purely technical or just aesthetic level. It looked neat.
Unlike we're looking at an image of the Borg cube parked on the beach, and unlike some of the CGI shots later in the episode, this one looks incredibly polished and very good.
Yes.
But yeah, Narek shows up over there, and I like seeing him do like some Romulan sneaking around in the cube to get past Seven and Elnor and the XBs that are in there. We get that conversation between
Seven and Elnor. Like a Metal Gear Solid game. He's stealthing it.
Yeah, it'd be funny if like an exclamation point appeared above one of the XBs.
Yes.
What do y'all think of that chat between Seven and Elnor?
Probably my favorite part of that sequence.
Yeah, I love both these characters. Elnor is my favorite new Picard character, and Seven. I was a huge fan of 7 of 9 on Voyager. She's my favorite character from that show, and I like the chemistry between them.
One of the things I like about Elnor is, of course, his candor, which is that's defining element of the sect he was raised with. But he wonders kind of without probably realizing how it's going to hurt Seven to just say it out loud. He's like, why the XBs don't just kill themselves because they have no homeland, everybody hates them, and all of that. And then she kind of like sort of mentally kind of starts to run with it, and she's like, yeah, I don't know why I shouldn't put a phaser, just put a phaser to my head. And he, in his very plain way, he's like, because I miss you. I always like, he's so good at those kind of really innocent, I almost want to say Forrest Gump type lines.
Yeah.
They're always kind of a little heartbreaking and very real when he
And
does them. So
he's unique.
That's what I like about it.
He's unique in that we haven't had a Star Trek regular like that. I mean, we've had some innocent characters like Data,
but Data wouldn't have the emotional range that Elnor does, at least not for most of Data's run. So he would never say, because I'd miss you, because that's not something he really feels most of the time in the show.
And Data also doesn't spin around with a katana.
Yeah, but now I totally want him to.
But
too late.
Narek sneaks past them, and we find out that Narissa is still on the cube.
What's up with that? She was about to be torn apart. There was a transporter effect, like she was beamed back to the ship, and then the ships flew away immediately after that.
That's what she wanted the XBs to think, and what the audience thought.
So did she beam to the ship and then immediately order them to beam her back to a different part of the ship?
Possibly.
Maybe. Is it possible she just beamed out to a different part of the ship? Who beamed her away? Did she kind of hit like an emergency beam button, like in Nemesis?
We don't know. It's kind of mysterious, but I like that because that's how the Tal Shiar should be.
It's a little dodgy.
It's also possible that she took a ship here and beat the rest of the fleet because they went to pick up O, and Narissa came here on her own. I like that we don't know. I just
assumed that she was with the fleet the whole time.
Yeah. So. Also, what was she hoping to accomplish by being the only Romulan on an entire Borg cube filled with XBs?
She didn't want them to take the cube, to keep the cube.
She thought, I will single-handedly take this cube back. She really thought, I'm motherfucking John McClane.
If she had said that, I would have been all about it. Brother, I'm motherfucking John McClane.
This was my favorite scene between Narissa and Narek. Primarily because there's no incest here, and
they do hug and seem happy to see each other.
Yeah, but they felt like a normal brother and sister.
Yes,
and they didn't feel like Romulannisters. But I like
maybe she wanted to try and sabotage the warp core and blow it all up. But she seemed a little bit directionless, I guess, when she runs into her brother, right? He's like, we need to go blow up the Orchid defense mechanisms of the colony. And I think, is she down with it?
Says, she seems to be okay with that plan, but she says, I'm going to stay behind and repair the cube's defenses.
Yeah,
the cube is being held by a hostile power. The cube is being held by what is to her a hostile power. So she's going to make the power available to those hostiles greater by fixing the defenses of the cube.
No, I don't think that was her intent at all. I think she wanted to use the weapons and shoot down any enemy ships, and that's what she tries to do.
The only ships she was expecting at that point were a bunch of Romulan ships. She wouldn't want to shoot them down.
I mean, I guess she might have intel that Starfleet's on the way.
They know that Picard might be trying to do something.
Yeah.
But the conversation between her and Narek, they drop a few details about their parents died for this Zhat Vash plan to stop the synths, and so many Romulans had died for this. We can gather. Do you think that she's talking about letting the evacuation not go through by O's plan to do the massacre on Mars and get synths banned in the Federation and stop the evacuation? Do you think that might have been what she was referring to? That's why their parents died and so many others died.
You're talking about during the Romulan evacuation that they died because of the Mars plan?
That's what I was kind of thinking. They were taking one for the team and letting their home system get destroyed.
No, I don't think I particularly processed that her aside about their parents. That sort of makes sense though.
Yeah, though this is a good point to mention. We never do learn why O decided of all the acts of terrorism that the synths could commit in Federation space, she would choose the one that would get hundreds of millions of Romulans killed. Of all, they could have attacked Mars, they could have attacked, or I mean, they could have attacked the moon, they could have attacked Vulcan, they could have attacked Starfleet HQ. No,
Right,
let's have them blow up all the ships that are supposed to rescue the people I'm sworn to protect.
Yeah,
you can't make an omelet.
Yes, you can. There were lots of other eggs. You did not have to break the only egg that mattered to you, the only egg that you had sworn to protect. You could have broken any of those other eggs. You could have also waited till after your egg had been delivered and then break the other eggs.
Dave proposed a good theory on that to the Zot Vash, they probably didn't want the Romulan people to feel indebted to synthetic life.
Right.
I just wish that someone had said that on screen.
Yeah,
okay.
I can't tell if it's on screen or not.
It makes them even more fanatically crazy wackadoodle than before, but okay, I buy it.
They've held on to this belief for a while.
Yeah, no, the Romulans are hyper conservative, so being exposed to Federation liberalism and being indebted to it in any way, I guess I could kind of see how they're maybe, I guess.
Well, if their foremost sort of philosophy is that synths are the destructors of the universe, the notion of having to like sort of shake the hand or acknowledge that one of them saved you, or that some Romulans might start kind of coming around and thinking, hey, we should really get into our own synth projects, they really helped us out. Would probably seem unthinkable.
Well, they probably find Federation culture in general to be highly offensive. So just anything that would, and we still end up with like a Romulans in France, Romulans married to Rafi's son. So.
No, they do keep O alive at the end of this episode, so it's possible that they use her in future episodes, and they might go into more detail there at some point. I don't know if they're going to want to keep bringing up the AI storyline, but I can see them keeping the Romulans around in Picard in some fashion. Kind of
the general trend of Star Trek, whether it's Discovery or Picard of more recent ones, is to not revisit plot points for clarification or context. So I don't see them returning to it.
No, they did that, and that's not true. In Star Trek Discovery Season 2, they spent a lot of time with the Klingons after they told that Klingon story in Season 1, and even tried to fix some of the things that they
so if
decided
fans
were bad
complain
ideas.
enough, then we'll get some answers.
Yeah,
I guess. I think that was more of a response to fan complaints. I
even
have
beyond
this feeling
that, the Klingons still played a smaller role, but they still played a pretty big role in Discovery Season 2. So I think it would kind of be within the trend to do that with the Romulans on Picard.
I expect Klingons to generally play a role in Star Trek. I don't know if they were they actually. They were somewhat following through on that one, but I don't see them going out of their way to do it. We'll see.
Okay, I hard disagree on that.
All right.
But we'll find out eventually whenever we get the second season. But let's talk about the La Sirena with Rios and Raffi having to repair it with their Arcadia of Time.
Yeah. Not a fan.
See, I was kind of like, all right, these androids are supposed to be super awesome. Mind you, if they become friends of the Federation, all this super awesome tech is going to become part of the Federation, like that transwarp beaming that you haven't disproven is out there, but you haven't mentioned it either. Tisk, tisk.
You know what, Brian? You hold on to the transwarp beaming the way Raffi holds on to her conspircy theory.
Yes.
She was eventually proven right, though. So
yes.
Take heart. Take heart. In this very episode, we see Sung, what's his name, Alton Sung, working on some stuff, and we see Dr. Girardi working on some tech at the android compound, and it all seems to be kind of within reasonable Star Trek computer tap away at the keyboard, mess around with some holographic haptic screen stuff. I didn't see any other imagination-powered kazoos or ocarinas, and so I felt like it was super out of place. It did sort of fit the crazy orchid hippie stuff, But
it also helped with the construction of that big transmitter. That also seemed to be Ocarina inspired.
Yeah, I guess so. I like a big old Deus Ex Machina. I did not like it.
No, okay, this is why I like this device, and I hope that they keep it on the show and continue to reuse it, because they gave it a limitation where it can only create things if you like understand what it's creating. Like if you can know how to engineer this yourself, and you can imagine it yourself, then it's basically just like a replicator that can read your mind. And I think that works within Star Trek. It's cool to have like this device that is kind of convenient for the characters.
So they wouldn't be able to say, hey, let's quick manufacture a Borg cube out of nothing, because they don't understand all the inner workings of a Borg cube.
Right. But if you just need a repair for your intermixer on the ship, the only reason why Rios couldn't repair it himself is because he needed the intermixer to have power for the replicator. So he couldn't replicate the part, but because like he knew it, he could imagine it, and this little thing made it. So the fact that they gave it like a limitation like that, and that's similar to how Girardi uses it later, that makes me like this thing, and I hope that they do clever stuff with it in future episodes. I would feel a little disappointed if they just kind of ignore this going forward.
I would like them to put it in an airlock and send it off to Doctor Who land where it belongs.
It's not. I don't really see it as like a Doctor Who thing, but I guess you could compare it to
a sonic screwdriver.
Yeah, I guess I want them to either explain why it's no longer aboard the ship, clearly, like come up with a good reason, or to use it as if it's now part of the toolkit.
But you know what it reminds me of? You know what it reminds me of is when they did the mobile emitter on Voyager.
Yeah.
And that was like a convenient future tech thing that they got. And I remember people complaining about that back in 96 or whenever, when they were saying like, oh, look at how unclever these writers are. They don't know how to write a hologram who's confined to a holodeck. So they had to create this magic device.
Oh, that's a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah. That's
yeah. I do think that, I mean, that a holographic, what do they call it? The holographic emitter?
The mobile emitter.
Yeah. Mobile emitter. Yeah. That certainly seems within the bounds of Star Trek technology. That doesn't seem crazy.
So does a replicator that can read your brain.
Didn't they?
Yeah, but they haven't had a replicator you can hold in your hand that can read your brain.
Yeah, just like they never had like a holodeck you could hold in your hand. So it's just miniaturization.
How had Moriarty left the holodeck? What tech was?
Because he didn't really leave the holodeck. The program.
Oh, they made it feel like he was. Yeah. Exploring.
No, Picard and Barclay thought that Moriarty was out of the holodeck, but they were actually still in the holodeck. None of them had left. That was the big twist.
So he goes off at the end, like exploring space or something, right? Or at least he thinks he does.
Moriarty, yes.
He's actually like locked up in a little box that's just running the program on continuous.
Just like our own reality, how we're in a Matrix-like program.
Yeah. Well, that was what Barclay suspected at the end. Like, what if we're all just
all Moriarty?
Yeah.
Anyway, Father, I think you do make a decent case for its limitations and how it could be used. I think I'd still rather it be gone, but I'll try and work with it if it sticks around. Yeah. I think the mobile emitter was not as egregious.
Well, I don't think either one of them is a problem. But. What I did think was kind of weird is when they do get the ship repaired, and Rios says, "I know that sound," when he's hearing those rocks hitting the windshield that Narek is throwing. If you look at
just lived a rough life.
But if you look at the geometry of the ship, like where they're standing by the engine, they can look straight at the windshield and see whoever's standing in front of it. Yeah. So I don't really get like why he's like, "I know that sound." He should be like, "Hey, what's that guy doing throwing rocks? I can see him from here."
Dramatic licensee stuff. They run up to the bridge, right?
Well, they're on the same floor as the bridge. They're just at the back end of the room.
And that's just a cooler shot. That's all.
Maybe the light was wrong on the screen. I don't know. Maybe he was throwing rocks as he walked around in front of it, so the first few rocks weren't hitting the window. I did love Narek's way of getting their attention is just to bung some rocks at it. It's just like, that's amazing. It's so, I don't know, just so
Practical.
wonderfully not Star Trek to be throwing rocks at the spaceship to get their attention.
But then Rafi calls him the abusive Romulan boyfriend. So I'm not sure how they recognized Narek unless Soji like really described him really well. But
Rafi knows what all
like
the Tal Shiar agents look like.
I would imagine that Soji could have easily shown him a picture of him at some point. Like, hey, watch out for this guy.
They probably took selfies together.
Do they all? There's more selfies or photos on this run than I think any other Star Trek show I can think of.
Yeah, Soji likes to collect pictures of herself, or she's programmed to like that. So
Rios is all about it. Picard is shown hugging with the Riker's kids and all that.
So I was surprised that Rios was threatening to shoot a photon torpedo at him, just because I was like, wait, isn't this a civilian ship? Civilian ships are allowed to carry around 64 megaton warheads.
Maybe they're not.
I think he was just talking trash.
Was just talking trash? Okay.
Yeah. I like that line. I actually really loved that line where it was. I'd love to see what it would do at this range.
Yeah.
Well, it would destroy your ship, Rios.
Yeah, I'm sure it would.
But then when Narek shows them the grenades and kind of puts all his cards on the table, which probably felt weird for a Tal Shiar Romulan. But
how much did they know about Narek, or might they have known about Narek?
Well, they've never met him until now, so all that they know is anything Soji would have told them.
Do you think Soji said, like, he tried to kill me?
I'm sure, yeah.
I'm sure she would have mentioned that part.
They seemed... I was weirded out by the scene to come where, even though he kind of he's like, hey, I'm not being duplicitous. I could have thrown these things and blown you up. It seemed a little dodgy how quickly they signed up for this, Romulan super secret manipulator guy's plan.
Yeah, but the stakes are high, considering like what they know, what they saw Sutra pull out of Agnes with the mind meld.
Oh, no, he started talking all his cult stuff, and it was pretty cool and metal sounding. Where he's like,
the campfire scene. Yeah,
what is it? The Gamadon or whatever.
Yeah. Well, first Elnor shows up, and we have that dynamic between Elnor and Narek, where he really hates Narek. He kind of blames him for his sister killing Hugh, and I'm
with Elnor here. I'm with Elnor.
The Kowat Malat are the enemies of the Tal Shiar. Mm-hmm. And I love him. I love Elnor's introduction when he shows up and pulls out that sword, because we didn't know who that silhouette was. At least I didn't. Did we see leave the Borg cube to follow Narek? I thought that might have been Narissa.
Oh, I totally thought that was Elnor. I was like, okay. Oh, Elnor's on his tail. Well, good. He's not going to get up to too much trouble.
So I didn't see it coming when Elnor shows up, and he tells him Thector Stam Torit, which I guess is the Romulan of please, my friend, choose to live. And I like that it didn't translate it with the subtitles, but Narek just replies like, I do very much choose to live.
Yeah, yeah, a nice payoff of that running thing.
Mm-hmm.
We get the campfire story that Narek tells them, which was it was super cool and metal, and I want to write a song about this. But
why are they outside the ship at a campfire after they fixed all the power to the ship, so the replicators and heat and all of that presumably work, and there's dangerous stuff going on? Wouldn't being locked inside your ship be safer?
Yeah, but it's fun to sit around a campfire, and it's atmospheric for your cool apocalypse story.
There's also a holodeck on board this ship where you can
I was going to say it's a holodeck of them sitting outside the ship.
It could be.
Least imaginative use of it ever. I think it's another case of just artistic visual license. And even while they're sitting out there, Elnor makes it really clear, because of his absolute candor, that he despises Narek.
Yeah.
But we get the story of Ganmadon, the Day of Annihilation, and I'll just go ahead and repeat it here. But the Galagoo, or twin demon sisters, Sebnatan and Sebsheneb, they come at the end of time. Sebnatan strikes a drum made of the skin of children with a chain made of skulls. so hard and for so long that her heart burst from the effort. Seb Cheneb blows the pale horn of a great hell beast that unleashes all the Chigalagu who have been waiting since the beginning of time. The sky
It's the worst when the Chigalagu are out.
The sky cracks and the Chigalagu come ravening. They bring forth the 1,000 days of pain, streets slick with entrails of half-devoured corpses and worlds burning. And the Chigalagu feast and nurse their brats on the blood and pick their teeth with bones. Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
As always, I love all this Romulan culture stuff. I'm quite enjoying it. I guess this is so. Didn't they say this one was so old? It's actually Vulcan culture stuff.
Yeah, and I like the idea of like Vulcans. They don't have mythology, so they kind of like reject things unless they have like some truth to them, I guess, as far as like these myths. And Dave, I know you said you had like a issue with all of this prophecy type stuff, but if they believe these are actually like recorded events that are likely to happen again, for me, that's what makes it work. I don't know if that addresses your criticism or not.
I mean, I don't. This was supposed to have been before Surak's revolution, right?
He says this is before their ancestors even arrived on Vulcan. So
yeah,
it suggests that the Romulans believe that Vulcans didn't even originate on Vulcan. They came to that world from somewhere else.
Which does fit with what little we've heard. Both Sargon says that the Vulcans might be descendants of his people in the original series, and they talk about Vorta Vor being the source where all life came from, not Vulcan.
It doesn't sound like a real story, is what I would say. It sounds like, biblical end time stuff, sort of what I would guess is a lot of religion sort of end time moments. So it's kind of hard to buy into it as something that they would believe would be a literal truth. It doesn't sound like literal truth. He was talking about history being cyclical, like it was Battlestar Galactica.
All of this will happen again.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, do they have records? Did somebody, like from when this previously happened or something? It was all a little vague and too mystical for me. Yeah. And I didn't like that Rios and Rafi and them were like, tell us more, because I would have been like, this guy is going full on cultist right now. As far as
I love DS9, and this is exactly how they use the Bajoran prophets in that show. So this seems kind of normal for Star Trek to have. Like, but
do you think that like he would be convincing to somebody like Rios, who's who's like really kind of a pragmatist?
I figured Rios just thought it was a good ghost story around the campfire. That there was an entertaining and interesting story that was well told, and that's why he's like, hey, let's hear some more of this. And Rafi is,
I guess, but it's like it's very well told by an enemy.
But they already know that there's like this world destroying force that did come to the galaxy once before and can come again now.
I actually still always thought that they're still buying into visions. And so I think that's why from the beginning I know that if you receive these visions from the what's it called again? The
admonition,
that it's extremely convincing to you the person who receives them. So I get that. 100% they're convinced. That other people would hear them talk about it and say, I guess it's real, is something that I've had an issue with the whole time. And unfortunately, they never quite addressed it to the point where I would, think, yes, this is a believable thing. Yeah, up until that metal tentacle comes out, I would be like, sounds like bullshit.
There's so many things that line up with what they know, like not only like with the destroyers coming and can come again, but also like with the twin thing. And when they learn, oh yeah, like this neural fractal duplication of making these sense, like it involves twins. And so that kind of explains why there's twins.
That's like Nostradamus's vague prophecies where we find meaning in it looking back, and like you can fit things to that, but you can do that with a lot of prophecies.
And I don't know, for me, I feel like the line that makes it work for me is when they said that like the Romulans don't believe in mythology. If they don't have a word for mythology, it's only things that I guess have really happened. They say it's like the news, things that were real and were documented in some way, shape,
fundamentalist Christians who believe the flood was a real thing. It's not mythology; it's history. These are all predictions of the future, or that are going to happen, or historical events that happened. So.
But they do form.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Brian, that all the Romulan culture stuff has been really good in this.
Oh yeah. Dave, you brought up a few episodes ago that season 1 of Discovery added so much to the Romulans, and we all three like Discovery here, but I think we all three admit that Discovery season 1 tried to add a lot to the Klingons, and it didn't work.
Yeah, this was definitely. I feel the Romulans were very much enriched. The Klingons feel like we explored some sort of side tributary of their culture that isn't like the mainstream. With the Klingons, it's kind of like, and there's these other type of Klingons over here. So that's a bit different. They definitely did a better job enriching Romulans and yet still making it feel like these were the Romulans we've always seen. I just think the Romulans are more interesting than the Klingons, so that helps too.
I don't know if I would have said that until watching Picard. I think that they kind of made the Romulans a little boring in like Berman era Star Trek, where at least they didn't really tap into all the potential that I think was set up in the original series. And that's one of the things I'll always be grateful to Picard is for fleshing out the Romulans and adding so much that also just cleans up some of like the inconsistencies we see between TOS Romulans and TNG Romulans. I feel like now that we've gotten to know like the culture more and kind of see some of the diversity in there, it kind of all works together much better.
Yeah, I think they really deserve accolades. I think one of the biggest things they've done is how they sort of rejuvenated the Romulans and really did for them what I think had happened to the Klingons over the course of TOS and TNG.
But they do agree to work with Narek, and they develop a plan to use one of his grenades to hide it in a soccer ball and sneak in with Narek as their prisoner to get into.
Is the actor who plays Rios, does he just actually like soccer?
We were talking about that last week when you were gone, and one of the things that I mentioned was that this guy is both Latino and British. There's no way he doesn't.
He's a super soccer fan.
Yeah.
We also talked about the Chekhov's guns that they had been setting up, or Chekhov's phasers, as we were calling them. I did not see that soccer ball as being a setup for a payoff. I appreciate it.
Yeah, there was something like in early seasons. I'm trying to remember episodes of this where I was like, well, this is definitely going to come back. It's some visual symbol. What was it? It wasn't the Lost Arena mermaid reference. It was something. What was the compass? Did the compass ever kind of come around?
Not really.
No.
Soji still had it when they were going through the transwarp corridor, but yeah, we just had it in episode 8 and episode 7 and episode 8.
Actually, I think a little precious about sort of literary conceits and symbolism. We've seen it throughout, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it's a little flat. I mean, I think the pretty obvious thing was it was meant to give Soji a direction, and she had what was the name of Riker's daughter?
Kestra. She had provided a direction for her and a goal to connect with Picard in her presence. So the compass sort of made sense, but yeah, it didn't come to fruition. Well, now that they have like their plan to sneak into Synthville, let's talk about Synthville a little bit.
AKA Coppelius. Is it Coppelius Station?
Yeah, that's what Soji called it previously. But now, we see. Or go ahead, Brian.
Well, Jurati mentions when she's trying to distract Dr. Soon that, Maddox always said you were really good at hacking files or something to that effect.
Encrypting.
Encrypting, yeah. So Is that indicating that she actually knew that there was another Soon son out there all along, and that guy was working with Maddox? Did she know, or is the whole thing a lie, and she's just hoping he doesn't call her on? Soon Maddox never would have mentioned me to you,
Either or.
All right,
I thought the same thing. Like,
that's a good point. You know when Picard has the butterfly here, the I guess synthetic butterfly, right?
Yeah.
Because we know Sung created it, and he was holding it. I was half thinking that Picard was going to do the Gandalf thing and whisper to it to go get the eagles.
I thought that too. I was like, oh, Patrick Stewart is being like his buddy Ian McKellen.
Exactly. They're close friends. He could have picked up some tips.
But the butterfly has another role to serve in the story. It's used for symbolism that we'll get into at one point, and they kind of
that metaphor does come to fruition.
But here we see that Agnes sees that you have to have that retinal scanner to go into Picard's room, and so that kind of foreshadows her plan later. But we get this conversation between Soji and Picard, where Soji is saying how she's voicing her frustration in that her as a person, I think, suffers from just being manipulated and controlled all of her life. You know, Maddox sent her on this mission. The Romulans tried to use her for their mission, and she has never had like any agency herself. And I think a lot of marginalized people might feel this way, in that their group doesn't get to like determine their own destiny. It's always the people in power that are making the choices. And that's one thing.
Even if you're like granting a boon to them in some way, it's kind of about you.
Yeah, and she tells Picard, you know, like, you organics decide if we live, you decide if we die, you know, you decide if we're banned or not. And she's also, I think, trying to convince herself. We know that she had some reluctance. She's probably trying to convince herself to go through with this Armageddon plan. And
right,
I love the line from Picard that, you know, when people tell themselves there's no other way, that shows a lack of imagination.
Yeah. I still struggled with Soji's turning to this after she had before the season finale 2-parter, she had bonded with him really tightly, and it sort of felt like a sudden swerve to have her kind of going like warming to the synth plan. I kind of wish that she almost that in the previous episode, although I loved that conversation with her and Picard, I think it was one of the best writing moments of the whole season. I almost wish they had more of a falling out right before, so that she would have it would have rung more true. I think to me,
that would have been good drama. Yeah, I would have liked that. I think.
Yeah, that would have been good.
But instead, she's going along with constructing this giant beacon that is kind of the ticking clock of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And we get a conversation that Brian kind of mentioned a second ago between Girardi and Soong, where we kind of figure out that, Girardi is still on our side. I like when Soong leaves the room and she's like, "They're not my children, asshole."
We have to assume she was willing to die to save them, because there was a lie detector run on that particular statement in the previous episode.
That's what I was going to mention. Yeah. Unless was it Sutra who said that?
Well, that she's willing to die, but she didn't say what for. She just said that she's willing to die.
I thought it was specified to keep them alive, to keep the synths alive.
Well, I think when Sutra says, like, "I'll be able to tell if you're lying, so is it true? Are you willing to die?" And then she says yes.
Yeah, I think there's probably room in there. Or Sutra was exaggerating her abilities.
Yeah, which kind of ends up meaning that Girardi actually believes that if she busts Picard out, they can find a way to save everybody.
Yeah,
it's not just we have to save the Federation from space reavers or whatever. But we have to say if I get Picard out, he can fix all of this, which is kind of cool when you think about it.
Yeah, and so this is where she has to take the eye from Saga. Poor Saga.
They should have shown that in the same way they showed Icheb's eye, just totally grisly. And
there's a guy in their sound effects department who's had 5 times he's been able to make the gross sounds of fingers digging around in eye sockets.
Oh, it only happens twice.
You know what? Let me exaggerate for comic effect. Get out.
I have only one skill, but I do it very well.
There's also stabbings in eyes and other things.
We didn't see what she was doing. We just kind of hear the sound effect. But I like that she says sorry. It makes her seem a little less monstrous, like ripping the eye out of this poor innocent dead victim.
Sometimes Dr. Girardi is very adorable.
Yeah.
When she's not, killing Bruce Maddox and stuff.
But she has the eye, she has the key to get into Picard's room. And then speaking of things that I like, I love when I don't know if y'all have ever had this experience, like going to like an old person's house and like wondering if they're going to be dead when you get there. But when she walks in, she's like, she sees
I think it's
Picard.
something my wife is familiar with, but not me, no.
Yeah, but when she sees Picard laying on the bed and she's like, "Are you?" And he's like, "No, I'm still here." He doesn't even open his eyes. He's like, "Oh, he's legit like had to lay down and take a nap because he's old."
Yeah, I was trying to make up my mind if I was a little bit annoyed that Picard wasn't like actively working on a plan, but the guy is he's supposed to be old and feeling it a bit.
When you're 94, you're allowed to take naps.
Yeah.
That's 94 in the future terms. That 94 is like 70 or something now.
When
No,
you're 70,
70,
you're allowed to take naps.
No. Not if you're a hero.
I would think that if you save the Federation a certain number of times, you get the nap pass.
That makes sense.
I like how Picard is surprised. He's like, "Oh, you're the one who's rescuing me." Like, I was. He doesn't say it, but I'm thinking like he'd be like, "I was expecting Rios or Raffi or even Soji to have a change up with you, like the awkward nerd."
Shouldn't he have been like, "Are you about to kill me like you killed Bruce Maddox?"
That's what I said last week when he's in the hospital bed and she's treating him. I would have been scared to wake up and see that.
Could we pull up the Hollow Doctor?
But
just as a witness, you understand.
Yeah, their plan is to run back to the La Serena after the La Serena crew has come into the city. And while all that's going on, Dr. Soong is finishing up his golem, and he's also finishing up on Saga's memory transfer, and he sees that, behold, treachery, it was actually Sutra who was involved with the murder of poor Saga.
And
this turned him from a collaborator to joining the sort of human rebels, I guess, huh?
Yes.
That's the thing with the Soong family, like the human Soongs, is you kind of never know which way they're going to go. And even here, I wasn't 100% convinced if he was going to be a good guy or a bad guy by the end of the episode.
The conversation about him between Picard and Data later brings the Soongs home in a nice, really crystallizes them.
I did think he had a solid reason for flipping, which was the robots have started killing each other. That's not how it was supposed to work.
Right. He wanted paradise and thought that they could achieve it, and then it turns out they were a little bit too human.
Yeah.
But our other heroes make it into town with their soccer ball prisoner plot. They get past.
This is a straight up player plan from a role playing game.
This is also what they did with 7 of 9 in Stardust City Rag. Remember when she pretended to be Picard's prisoner?
It's always fun to do. It's always fun.
And hey, it worked that time. They got in that time, so why not do it again? It seems to work.
The only thing that didn't work out of there is that 7 herself kind of almost blew up the deal.
But this is where they see the tower being built, the beacon, and then Soong catches them sneaking in. And so right here, I didn't know if Soong was going to rat them out or help them.
No, that was well played. I did think, oh, where's he gonna go?
But Alton Inigo Soong seems to be on the side of the Angels, and he actually confronts Sutra. I like that they had this moment in here where he goes to where they're building the beacon and actually like pulls Sutra aside and confronted her. And here, like we see like his true motivations. And I like that he deactivated her. They could still bring her back in the future if they wanted to. Like I don't know if she was like that compelling of a villain, But the option is there if the show or any novels in the future want to use Sutra. This is the last we see of her is when Soong deactivated her. And then we get some action here where our Romulans, Elnor and Narek, get to like punch some synths and flip around and kick them.
At first, I was like, how is you possibly going to be able to fight these super strong androids? And then I was like, actually, Volcanoids are pretty damn strong, too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it wouldn't be a
didn't last
cakewalk.
too long.
They still don't last long.
No,
Yeah,
Yeah, the androids take them down pretty fast once they are up and running.
Yeah, I kind of thought this actually works. And who knows? Has anyone actually programmed these androids to fight? I guess somebody programmed Soji and Dodge to fight.
They were doing Tai Chi earlier. So.
True.
They seem pretty chill in their martial arts.
They're like these chill hippies, like they're not Herberts. They all reach, brother.
Yeah.
So
but they're like Soji could turn on a dime and go super kung fu mode.
Because she was a secret operative, so they probably made her a little bit more combat ready.
Yeah, I didn't know if they all had a little bit of that in them in case they got triggered.
But these other ones, like, they probably punch them in the face, and they're like, "I've never been punched in the face before. Like, why does my nose hurt like this?" I thought it was interesting that Rios, when he gets into place to deploy his soccer ball grenade, which is a thing.
I was hoping he was going to kick it, by the way.
Me too. That's what I was hoping.
I'm sure it was discussed. I'm sure it was discussed on the set how they were going to do this.
He's hesitant at first, and he says, "Move, Miha." So I don't know if he was trying to he didn't want to deploy it too close to Soji.
I think so.
But then he ends up deploying it anyways. After Narek is subdued and he's screaming to Soji, he's like, "No, don't do it, don't do it." And then when she's distracted, that's when Rios tries to deploy the grenade anyways. But she just catches it.
Oh yeah.
The way that she caught it reminded me of Lol in the Next Generation episode, The Offspring, when she tries to catch the ball. Someone throws a ball to her, and it just goes past her, and then she raises her hand, delayed 5 seconds after it went by her.
That
true.
Yeah,
you're
that might
right.
have even been a sort of intentional tribute.
Yeah.
I know that in the Ready Room after show, I think she mentioned that. Was that the one she mentioned as a favorite episode?
Yeah. Last week she said that was one of the things before they told her to watch it. She was doing some research on her own, and there was already a Data's daughter. I better watch that one.
Yeah, I have forgotten to amidst this season to rewatch it myself, and so that is on my to-do list.
I really like that episode. It makes me cry so much at the end. I think I've talked about it before.
It is incredibly sad at the end.
Yeah. That's such a unique Star Trek thing to be sad for Data, in that he doesn't even have the emotion to grieve the loss of his daughter. That's the saddest thing ever.
So,
but
they missed their chance. Impact detonation on the grenades. I suppose then you certainly wouldn't want to kick it. But
I like this idea of it was very Last Jedi to me, and I mean that as a compliment because I love the Last Jedi. But okay, we have this cool plan and we're going to execute it, and oh no, it didn't work.
Yeah. And in fact,
sometimes the players, their plans have to fail.
And they have to put all of the weight, all of the stakes, it all has to be on Picard's shoulders for kind of the climax to work.
Well, yeah. Were you guys annoyed that basically Rios and Rafi and Elnor and all of them, they basically contribute nothing to this episode?
No, I wasn't annoyed.
They could have just sat around the campfire for the entire episode and nothing would have changed.
That's like the Raiders of the Lost Ark problem.
That's what they did the subplot. It was they give them something to do, and then they can't do it. They failed, so now it's all up to Picard.
Yeah,
and,
no, I
don't see it coming. So I like it.
All right. I don't mind them failing, but the fact that they didn't accomplish even a minor detail or give a small assist to Picard or something.
Well, did they get Soong on board?
Huh?
What?
I don't know. Did they got Soong on board, right?
Yeah, he helped.
No, Soong got himself on board.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But it wouldn't have happened if he hadn't overheard them, or did he? No, he just found stuff.
Yeah, they really don't do anything here. It all comes down to Picard and what he says to Soji momentarily.
Well, because for the last episode or two, I had felt Picard was a little bit off to the side sometimes on making big decisions and kind of being in control of his own show. It was pretty important to me that he be the guy who was make or break for the episode.
Good point. I remember you saying that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the plan is botched. Soji is continuing with the beacon. Meanwhile, back on La Sirena.
Now, are we supposed to assume that Jurati took Picard to wherever they hide their transporter at that camp, at that little outpost, and beamed back to the La Sirena?
Possibly. I just thought that they walked there.
But they didn't pass their buddies who would have been walking pretty much the same route. And it's not like there's dense forest or something where you wouldn't be able to see each other.
Because they had to sneak out of the town. They didn't go through the main gate. So
maybe they did pass them and they were just like, well, I don't have anything really important to say. Let's just keep going.
There was a deleted scene.
They just wave.
No, I'm headcanoning it that they must have had a transporter at that outpost and just beamed. Jurati said, "Oh, I've got the codes. They gave them to me." Watch, beep, beep, beep.
I think that works.
And it explains how they get there.
Right?
I mean, Picard traipsing all over these hills for Picard can't actually be that easy either. So the fact that he had to only do it once makes things a little more believable to me as well. So
I like seeing the pair up of these two. They hadn't really done much stuff together since the very beginning when Picard is meeting her for the first time. So I liked them kind of doing like this little mission together. And this is also like the guy who knows he's about to die because he has his Aromatic syndrome or whatever they're going to call his brain abnormality, since they never say aromatic, but he knows he's about to die. And this chick is basically suicidal at this point. So
she's also, does she know from previous episodes? Is she one of the ones who knows he's that it's fatal?
Yeah, she was.
He's told everybody at this point.
She was the one who figured it out with the.
She figured it out.
Yeah,
that's kind of an interesting that the person who's maybe most cognizant of it is with him.
She's also a medical doctor, according to the novel. So if you're 94, it probably makes sense to bring your doctor with you on your mission. But Picard has some good dialogue here. He says that these synths, they're like children, and they've only learned from like these old hermits. And now they need to learn that life is both a right and a responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
She says, how are you going to show that to them? We don't have any time. And he says, they're going to learn how all children learn, by example.
Yeah. I like that. I also really loved when Picard lost it a few minutes, earlier in that same scene. We're like, what are we going to do? I don't know. Or whatever he said. That was like, how many times have we seen Picard's emotions totally overwhelm his reason and self-control?
And
that one time that Sarek had put his katra in it.
Yeah, and even that's kind of like
that was artificial.
Artificial. Yeah. I will say when he breaks down crying in Family.
Yeah.
But
First Contact.
Yeah, when he smashes the thing.
But your point is, of course, taken. It's a very rare thing.
Yeah, that he even when he's really angry or really happy or really sad, it's usually let out in a controlled manner.
Moderation.
That was him. Like, I've got no freaking clue. I just don't know what to do. Just for a moment. And I thought that was incredibly powerful and incredibly raised the stakes too. On wow, even Picard's losing it. It's bad. So
I was very excited in this scene to see Picard assert just a bit of cool old school technical know-how when he revealed that he had been watching how Rios flew the ship, and with a bit of work he could do it too.
Yeah.
He actually,
for that,
without any jokes, he generally flies it pretty well.
Yeah. I did think he could have just called up the emergency navigator and stuff and given orders like he usually does.
I know, that's what I thought. I was like, why don't he use the holograms? Maybe they don't know they don't know Rios's password to turn on the holograms.
Yeah, well, a quick line like, if only they'd fix the hologram generators, that would have just one little line would have been fun.
But I love that line, like when he's.
I bet in his prime, I'm sure Picard was probably a better pilot than a emergency pilot program could be.
Oh yeah, no, they make a big deal about how good that he's a pretty good pilot when they put him.
We got a train coming by.
Yes,
when they put him in that shuttlecraft in Booby Trap, I think, to navigate the Enterprise out. Or no, it was the dark matter one.
Wait for the train to pass, and then we can talk about booby trap.
All right.
Yeah, this when these trains go by, they the air horn blasts 2 or 3 times as they approach the crossways. And all right, I think it's more or less out of our.
Next to me laughing because I just said booby trap.
We're all very mature here.
Right, as you were saying, Picard is a skilled pilot.
Well, yeah, there was one where they had to navigate the Enterprise out with a shuttle craft, or no, with the what was it? They had to.
He guided them in the shuttle, and the Enterprise had to follow.
Yes, and the fact that they figured, oh, Picard is up to this job, says something about his piloting skills.
Especially knowing that Riker is a super proficient pilot from Chain of Command.
Yes, I did think. In fact, I've always felt that almost felt a little wrong with trying to jive those two things. But certainly, we have to accept that Picard must be an amazing pilot for those TNG episodes to make any sense.
Yeah. I really like how his piloting all came together here, where he used to be like the guy who's like, oh yeah, I'm like the old grandpa. I don't know how to operate this new technology, but I'm Jean-Luc Picard and I'm still really sharp and I can learn. I thought that was really cool. And it made me like that moment from 2 episodes ago so much more.
Yeah.
The one where they poked a little fun at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the show reminding us that Picard is old. Like the joke we had earlier when Girardi thinks he might be dead. I love all of that stuff whenever they let him just be like a really old guy.
Patrick Stewart has seemed so game for all of that, both revealing Picard's weaknesses and his strengths and hidden strengths he didn't know he had and hidden problems. He has been really game at it and great at conveying it. It's hugely impressive.
And when they finally do take off and they go into space, it does feel a little bit like, watch out, everyone get off the road, Grandpa is driving. He struggles with it a little bit. And she's trying to...
A little bit, but like...
And she's like, why won't you answer back? Are you trying to be dramatic? And he's like, no, I am trying to not crash or explode. Is that okay with you?
That's a good still frame you've got there for anybody who's just listening to this. Picard has the raised eyebrow of anger.
And the ship was even kind of flying, kind of like zigzaggedy.
Just a little bit. I appreciated that they didn't make it like ridiculous or anything. It was just like maybe a little less clean than it would have been if Rios had been doing it.
Yeah, I tend to assume Rios has got his ship tricked out for excessive maneuverability anyway, that like this is probably, despite like being vastly bigger than a runabout, probably has the same turning radius or whatever you want to call it, or acceleration capabilities and thruster spinning capabilities as a runabout. My kind of feeling is that he's the type of guy who wants a ship that can turn quickly. So
yeah.
No, while they're off in low orbit getting ready for the Romulans, Narissa is on this cube getting the weapons up and running, and it looks like she's about to get like a target lock on on La Serena. There's no the because La is the. Yeah. She's about to get a target lock on La Serena, but 7 of 9 intervenes, and we get that.
Apparently, there was a prophecy because she knew she was going to need to have this targeting system ready just so she could shoot Picard down.
Well, she knows at this point, Narek told her that there's some orchids out there, so she was probably getting ready for those primarily. But,
I suppose.
Dave, I know that you hate this character, Narissa. I think this episode actually used her pretty well in the conversation she had with Narek earlier. But how do you feel about watching 7 of 9 kick her ass here?
It didn't do much for me.
I was well, I'll let you talk, so...
When she says this is for Hugh and kicks her down, I kind of thought that delivery of that line was a little stilted.
I think so too, but also like I prefer watching a villain I like get taken down than a villain who I'm meh on. So like because I never felt she had kind of earned her villainy, it was not a super satisfying moment for me. I actually most like the character 2 episodes back when they gave her a little bit more depth and just revealed a little bit of sadness and nuance in her past in that flashback. So I wanted to see more of that. And here she was just being full racist.
She called her a half-meat. It's a really nasty sling.
I think
She said
that
all
wasn't
she
just
got-
racism. I think that was psychological manipulation to
absolutely,
recover
absolutely.
from this disadvantaged situation.
What did she say? All you got for your 6th birthday was being assimilated by the Borg.
Yeah.
I like that they have done enough research that like they know who Seven of Nine is. They know
She called her Annika.
Voyager. Narissa clearly saw the episode Raven.
Yeah.
Those
Do y'all want
Tal-Shiar.
to see Narissa come back? Because she easily could have survived this.
You think? We heard her scream really go on for like 2 or 3 seconds. She must have fallen a long way.
Yeah, she could have had like a Batman like grappler hook gun or something like that.
No.
I'm fine with them just bringing O back and Narek back, and we don't. I've had enough of Narissa. So,
Me too.
I would like to see more of Narissa because I think she actually has done some interesting stuff in the last couple of episodes with her. And I also
By the way,
think
we know you find her hot. I understand.
I was about to admit to that.
I will. It's not so much that I hate her. I just think one of the we need to kill a few of the villains to make this feel real. So if
That's
all the
kinda
villains
true.
get away, if
I'm
Sutra
saying
gets away
no
and
body.
O gets away,
You don't see a body, and she's Tal Shiar.
I'm not saying they can't bring her back. I just think that season is more satisfying as if at least some of the villains die.
There is something satisfying about seeing the bad guys get taken down.
I
They gave her a kick down a well takedown. I sort of hope she's gone, but if they bring her back, I hope she's better written.
Yeah. I also was cheering because I was like, oh, Borg versus Vulcanoid. This is going to be awesome. And it was.
Thrust Free K, longtime Tex-Trek viewer on YouTube, is in the chat right now. And he suggested that Narissa has a device on her that allows her to beam herself away. So,
that's true. It could be a remote trigger to some other transporter room in the cube. It would explain a lot.
Yeah. But 7 of 9 deactivated the weapon system, and then back in space, the Romulan fleet finally arrives. And at this point, it's just Picard and Dr. Girardi confronting all these warbirds. That
I was looking at those warbirds when they do that zoom into the window thing, and I'm like, those warbirds are tiny. They're like bird of prey size. Like, they're about like probably maybe the length of the Enterprise of Kirk's old Constitution class saucer section. Once they show how big the bridge is relative to the rest of them, they're not
the main
big.
command ship is a different design.
Okay.
I actually like the command ship design a little bit better as we saw it. It seemed like they didn't want to show it off too much, which was a little bit weird, but I liked it a little bit better than I think I had at quick glances previously.
All these have grown on me a little bit. I kind of like them. That being said, I should mention I was never in love with the D-Deradix from Next Generation. I know a lot of people are crazy about that ship design.
Oh, that's an awesome guy. Yes.
Yeah, I know both of y'all are really fond of it. I'm kind of like, it's okay.
Nothing says dangerous like biplanes in space.
But yeah, this is the arrival of O, and this is like the first of like 4 or 5 times when she says, "Go ahead and prepare the planet sterilization."
I almost felt bad for her. Every time she was like, "Destroy them now." Now we're.
Honestly, towards the end, when like our countdown clock with our beacon would basically expired and it was ringing, I was kind of like, dude, I would just ignore. You're trying to save the whole galaxy. Ignore the Starfleet. Ignore whatever the distraction is. Just open fire on the beacon. That is the thing to do right now, even if it means a bunch of your ships get blowed up.
Yeah, it would make a little bit more sense if they did that.
So if they had a bit more of an extended battle that wasn't they were really focusing on Picard's actions during the shooty orchid fight and all that stuff.
You get a battle here when the synths deploy the orchids, and they look so cool. I love the CGI on these things, just like I loved it last week. And they look so good the way that they're lit, and they're so colorful, and they look good the way that they move in space. Unlike some of the other CGI shots we'll get in this episode that are much less polished. What do y'all think of like the floral battle? I guess I'll call it.
It was fun. It was cool. I wasn't sure exactly what Picard was trying to do out there. He just kind of seemed to be zigzagging around, but
well, I think he's just trying to be a distraction long enough and be on the comms with Soji and let her hear him try to like save her people to try to convince her to do the right thing.
All right, I'm going to fly around and do dangerous stuff just so that Soji feels sorry for me. Here we go.
He said that he was. Of course, he will call up Soji shortly and say that he's going to be willing to die for her. Yeah. Now, had he cleared that with Dr. Girardi?
Yes, that's what I was saying. Like both of these people are the ones willing to die. So
yeah, I guess so. Dr. Girardi in the picture you pulled up, Father, it looks like she's considering it.
Well, this is where she is using the Ocarina of Time. That I guess we need a better name for the imagination tool. But
sure, sonic screwdriver will do.
This is a good. I don't see it like a sonic screwdriver, but like sonic screwdriver doesn't let you like project a bunch of images of your ship.
It's a joke.
It's more like unlocking doors.
You wait till next season. Suddenly the Sonic will do that.
I think Picard was basically trying to figure out what exactly he was going to do while he held the line. If there was something he could pull off to keep them off the until Starfleet showed. And I did like I thought that the visuals looked great on that scene, him weaving in and out of these burning giant orchids and watching some of the Romulan ships get taken down.
Yep. No, that was a lot of fun. I was just kind of like, why are you weaving through all these ships? But I guess it's just about trying to, show you're willing to die for the androids.
I think he was also trying to stay alive. There was a lot of shooting going on. I think he was hugging the orchid
for Starfleet to show up.
Yeah. It just kind of felt like, all right, this bumblebee is going to stop this car whizzing down the road at 80 miles an hour. Buzz, buzz, buzz.
But then Girardi gets her plan.
Yeah, the use of the Picard maneuver, I like how Picard described it as what they're putting a twist on the Picard maneuver, where they're actually going to create images of like multiple Las Serenas. I guess they'd be Las Serenas at that point. But how he compares it to like ancient warplanes scattering bits of mirror to overwhelm the radar system. And because like Agnes Girardi like understood what you would need to do that, which was like, oh, you need a wacky fundamental field replicator with a neurochromatic interface. Because like she's smart enough to like know the machine, know how it would work and stuff, and could imagine it, then this thing can replicate that on the spot. So this is the type of application I like it being used for.
Yeah. So anytime we can tech the tech.
Yeah. If it was like, oh, let's build like a big super laser that blows all the Romulans up, like that would be dumb. But because like it was building like a practical machine that like she can imagine in her head, I really like that. And I know Dave hates this thing, but I want to see it used more in future seasons.
I am afraid that like this.
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
I'm afraid that, like the sonic screwdriver, it could easily turn into a crutch that might get annoying. But I'm willing to be proven wrong. They use the Doc Holodecks mobile emitter in a responsible, interesting way that seemed plausible, and they could do that here too.
Stress-free K again in the chat says it's a 3D printer with voice command.
I guess like a really good 3D printer, yeah. I think because I've been watching Lost in Space, the Netflix one, I feel like I kind of prefer when I see them work a little harder at their technological victories rather than imagine their technological victories.
Well, that's something that people complained about in Next Generation when they started putting replicators on the ships. So,
I will say thematically, they keep it's a lack of imagination, and here's the stuff. We solve the problem with imagination. There's this theme in this episode that imagination is a tool, is a weapon, is a way of resolving problems. I think it's mentioned, aside from the ocarina, I think you call it the aside from that, it's like mentioned at least twice, I think, in the episode.
Yeah.
So
here, like after O kills all of the flowers, she says again, okay, we can blow up the planet now. And then we get the false Las Serenas warping in And I kind of liked the animation there, how they were all doing like identical movements until the main one gets shot, and then they all like tumble out of control.
Yeah.
We also see Soji react then when she's like has concern for Picard, and she's like, "No." So it kind of sets up her eventual change of heart.
Genocide's a little harder when you might like one of the people you're going to genocide.
When your recently discovered surrogate grandpa figure that might be part of it. But the beacon does get activated, and it opens a big red space portal. And this is when O again says, "Okay, for real this time, everyone get ready for planet sterilization pattern 5 or whatever." And poor O is interrupted by Captain Riker's fleet of the copy and paste ships.
Which, given the copy and paste La Serena, I was really expecting her to go, it's sir, they're all the same ship class. It's another ruse. Somebody's doing that. Only one of those ships is real.
Well, there was some variation.
That would have actually been kind of cool if they tried that, and they're like, our disruptors are hitting shields.
Yeah.
The warp nacelles on some of these ships look different, so they did put a very little bit of variation in here. But also, like, these CGI models look very bad. There is not much detail. Typically on Starfleet ships, we can see things like escape pods and RCS thrusters and the names of the ships and the registry numbers of the ships and some pinstripes with a Starfleet Delta on the end of them. And these don't have any of those details. Yeah. I did learn that the special effects for Picard were not completed until 9 days before this episode released. So that explains a lot of this. And there's even like a piece of dialogue that we get when Captain Riker, or acting Captain Riker, on the Zhang He is talking to Commodore O, and he tells her that he has the toughest, fastest ship Starfleet has ever built. Then the camera cuts away to his back, and he says, "And I got a fleet of them at my back." So I think that was like an ADR line they threw in there to explain why all the ships look alike.
Yeah, I thought I read somewhere that that's the reworking of the Discovery bridge that he's on. Is that?
Yeah. So they actually shot Riker's scene when Jonathan Frakes was up in Toronto directing an episode of Star Trek Discovery Season 3. And I wish that they hadn't done that, because that captain's chair is so recognizable as the Discovery chair.
Honestly, I only noticed it the second time through when I'd signed a tip off on the internet to look for it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that is the Discovery." But
I'm someone who, if they, what's the class of ship, or do we know?
Crossfield?
We don't know. It's the Zhang He is the name of the ship.
That's the specific one. If they show it again at some point and it has a completely different bridge, I don't think it would bother me. I would just take it in stride.
You can change the bridge on ships. They have like a bridge module that you can remove. So
well, that'd be for y'all, for you guys who are would worry about that. For me, I'd be fine if they just acknowledged, we did that in haste. And in a meta sense, we just had to we came up with a better bridge for the more permanent version.
Yeah, certainly as money saving efforts go, I would have much rather they did more with the cut and paste ships than with trying to make the bridge look more different. But
now, that said, it did convey the idea a big Starfleet cavalry has arrived. Like the basic idea comes through.
Yeah, and even though, like, I was disappointed that they all looked the same. TOS did that with the Constitution class. And that's what most alien races in Star Trek do. Actually, they show up with like all the ships looking the same. It's just kind of cool that Starfleet had, the infinite diversity and infinite combinations. We make a bunch of different types of ships, and Eagle Moss can sell models of all of them for you to collect.
Yes.
But what do y'all think about the reveal of like Picard's transmission from last week, where O says we lay claim to this planet, and Riker is like, "No, Picard already did that for the Federation, and it's under our protection."
Well, I mean, at this point, when you're talking about the fate of the galaxy, I don't know if anyone really cares about these little laws, but sure.
He didn't care. She didn't care at all.
Yeah.
She was like, get ready to fight these ships.
Yeah.
And it was
Riker
weird.
got to throw some Riker swagger at her.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. When he said, please give me an excuse.
Here's the Riker method of sitting.
Yeah.
Because Jonathan Frakes has back problems, right? So that's what he said.
But it also it came to fit the character, of course. And he looks like a badass. Seeing Frakes again was great. I enjoyed seeing him.
For a guy who was worried to come back for Picard because he hasn't acted in so long, he jumped right back into that character. Mm-hmm. And I know that Jonathan Frakes had said for a long time, he'd always be willing to come back and be Riker again. You can kind of feel how happy he is to be in the captain's chair, barking commands, being a badass. Yeah. And that shows up on screen in a way that works because Riker himself, Jonathan Riker, who had retired for a little bit, for him to come out of retirement would also probably have that same type of excitement and enthusiasm for what he's doing.
Yeah, he definitely seemed to be selling it. This is my chance to convince them they need a Riker show. So.
I wish he hadn't called the shields deflectors, but
I was going to ask you all about that. He said what deflectors to maximum?
Yeah. The Next Generation Tech Manual calls them deflector shields in their official write-up, but they're generally shields. It does seem odd that Riker would change the terminology that he has been using for decades.
Especially when he just said shields up 3 episodes ago, but
he's old too, okay?
Unless deflectors are supposed to be some new technology that we didn't know about that they've invented that is something slightly different than traditional shields.
They're just using them kind of interchangeably, I think.
Yeah.
Can use a deflector array to make their shields stronger. That's going to be my headcanon.
Okay. Yeah.
Sure.
There could be some new cool way of doing things. Federation's always getting smarter in theory. So
this is when Picard starts having his brain pain. And he asked Dr. Girardi to inject him with this medicine that she's reluctant to do at first, but he says it will only hasten the inevitable. So my interpretation of this, I didn't think it was real clear, but the only way I can see to read it is that he tells her to give him a medicine that will help him here in the moment, but it'll kill him.
Yeah, that's exactly how I took it. Is that
for sure. He stabilized for a little bit shortly after it, but then he just not.
Because this is when he calls Soji again, and for the first time in her life, she's given control. She's given the driver's will, and she decides to ultimately, do the right thing with Picard's encouragement and shut down the beacon. And he has this conversation with her on an open channel, so O is hearing it. Riker on the Zhang He is hearing it. And when Soji does power down that beacon, we see those cool little weird tentacles. I don't know if that's supposed to be Dr. Octopus from Spider-Man.
Those are Sentinels from the Matrix.
Yeah.
This is going to be a really weird deep cut, but in the final episodes of the 80s Transformers animation, there was when they were doing the Headmasters, there was the Nebulon planet had the hive thing with the weird robot tentacles on there.
Okay.
But yeah, whatever this is, it's prevented. The portal is closed.
Do something I was wondering about? The alien overlords from beyond space and time said, "Signal us when you're ready for us to sterilize the galaxy." Is that signal the only way that they can get through? I guess can they not use their super alien overlord robot?
I assumed they were receiving the signal and they were opening the door, and then when the signal stopped, they decided to close the door. However, this is weird. It's like calling 911 and saying, "All right, there's a thing here. It's going on." Click. Beep. Oh, well, I guess they're fine.
I thought it was they're "Oh, you want us to show up and kill everyone? Okay." And then they were able to see Soji choose not to do that, and they were like, "Oh, you don't want us to do that? Okay, bye."
A little line from Soji saying, "I told them we were fine," would have been wonderful, I think, to make it rationalizing this, just something to maybe written a little better than the "I told them we're fine," but something like that,
Yeah, I kind of agree.
I thought it was funny though when Riker tells Commodore O, prepare to be escorted out of Federation space. And she says that won't be necessary and then takes off.
Yeah. Well,
I guess was she placated by the fact that the synths had chosen to spare them, and she was like, wow, maybe these synths are not so bad after all.
Well, and that the transmitter was destroyed. So,
yeah,
and that it was the androids who destroyed the transmitter.
And there was also like a fleet that would stop her from doing anything on this planet. I feel like it wasn't, at this point, it probably wasn't worth her, especially though the Romulans are weakened now that they probably have a lot fewer resources. Probably wasn't worth it for her to sacrifice this whole fleet to destroy a planet that it turned out wasn't the big threat that she feared.
Yeah.
I like that they
kind of
didn't do
wish
the
this had been shown to be more of a existential crisis that would, like, seeing those androids make that choice would, like, break her down completely. I mean, these are the most fervent believers, some of the most fervent believers we've seen in Trek, and her just kind of coldly being like, well, that wasn't what I expected, gotta go.
Yeah, you're right.
That anticlimactic.
Yeah, there was some mileage there they could have dug into. You're right. I hadn't thought about it, but yeah, I agree.
One of our listeners, Adam B. Owen, has pointed out to us on our Facebook page, O is such a war criminal now that she is known as the one responsible for the Mars massacre. You'd think that she would need to answer to those crimes somehow.
Yeah, they clearly wanted to diffuse the situation quickly so they could get on with the finale, the emotional finale for Picard and Data and the rest of them. But it felt to me like it happened so fast where, I actually really enjoyed the short conversation between Riker and Picard that you got that image up of. But then Riker's like, I leave this in your hands. And he just, like, the whole fleet leaves.
It actually felt like there was something cut out of the conversation when he jumps to, well, then I'll leave it in your hands. Felt like a response to a line that we didn't get to hear. To me, when I watched it the second time.
After Riker says that, Picard says, I got it from here.
Yeah. So maybe they reversed the lines. I don't know. I do totally get why, there's a huge fleet of Romulan ships and a huge fleet of Starfleet ships. They might start fighting. The Romulans have decided to turn around and leave. Yes, it would be great to arrest O and put her up for war crimes, but maybe we'll just call today a win and escort them back to Romulan space instead of getting thousands of people killed.
I think they
starting a war,
Yeah, and I think they also wanted to make sure that they actually did go to Romulan space, so they were probably gonna, follow them for a little bit and make sure that they.
Yeah, that sort of makes sense. I imagine that they would petition the Romulan government to turn O over to face trial for her crimes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I know that the tendency is to not to kind of get involved in details like that, but I still sort of would have liked to have seen some little bits and pieces of that.
I think or go ahead, Brian.
I think O is going to be a villain in season 2 at some point. Maybe not the main villain for the whole season, but I don't think we've seen the last of her. Yeah. And I don't think she's just going to be behind bars unless it serves the story.
The show uses the Romulans too much. I don't think they're going to have like a clean divorce from all of that in the second season.
I hope that if she returns that somebody goes, oh no.
Or they could go, no, oh.
That's dumb.
There's another cereal gag in here for like the Tribble cereal somewhere.
You can get the Commodore O's available now.
Yes.
I did like when Riker leaves that, like, after his friend leaves, Picard has said goodbye, then he does like his like real like somber goodbye where he just says adieu in French. Yeah. And he looks so sad because like he knows like that's the last time I'm ever going to see that guy.
I liked when Picard said, thanks for always having my back.
Yeah.
And then we get the death of Picard where he starts having like weird dreams of the vineyard and Data again.
Do you not feel that it would have been responsible of Riker to leave one starship in orbit just to make sure the situation stayed under control?
That's one of those small things I would have definitely liked to have seen.
Yeah, maybe they did. We don't know that they don't.
I think we saw them all sort of warp out.
Well, yeah, Girardi seems to
It
think
wasn't a
that
wide enough shot to see all of them.
Yeah, but Girardi seems to think that the best medical facilities for Picard are down on that planet rather than
That's
on
not
a
true
starship.
either. That's not true because she thinks it's pointless. They actually say like, "There's nothing we can do.
Well,
He's going to die no matter what."
All right. It seems like if there was a state-of-the-art Starfleet sickbay in orbit, somebody would have mentioned it as an option.
Because Soji even says, Soji's like, "Can you get him to like one of your sick bays or something?" And Girardi is like, "No, there's nothing that can stop this. He's literally
I think
die.
in reality, in a somewhat more realistic approach, Brian is right, and that there'd be like probably some effort to save him, and like presumably Dr. Girardi is not the final word on medical stuff as she's a roboticist.
Well, she knows that she just injected him with murder poison.
Yeah, dramatically speaking, I understand why they did it. They wanted to get everybody together, but yes, you would think that the state-of-the-art flagship of the fleet might have something to offer. Anyway,
I'm sure Beverly Crusher, if she'd been left behind on one of those ships, it was in the sickbay of the ship that got left behind, would be really torqued off that she didn't get to try. So,
but you want them to beam down and have the death in front of all of the
true.
cast,
right?
Okay, and I suppose if everybody involved kind of knows that's what's needed to sell this never call the evil space gods again thing, then maybe that's kind of what's going on.
We got to show the sense that this guy literally died for them, that he is android Jesus.
Yes.
I did like that when everyone does kind of gather around him, and Picard has that moment with Soji where he's like, "Oh yeah, like you did the right thing. It was your choice." But then the people that he has like the big moments with after Soji are Elnor and Raffi, because those are the two people like he's known for a while.
Yeah,
and like he smiles at Elnor, and then his last words are he tells Raffi like, "You were right," like saying like, "Oh yeah, you were right about all that conspiracy theory stuff."
Yeah,
and then
those are the words she likes to hear.
Yeah. I didn't even notice that earlier she was kind of beating up Rios, like, tell me those 3 words that I love.
Yeah.
But then here she hears it and literally like bursts into tears on the spot.
Yeah.
I like that.
No.
Did y'all think that Picard was actually dead?
Not for a moment.
I didn't either.
I think unfortunately this and the next few minutes that followed fell a little flat for me because it didn't. It kind of felt like a fake out, and I was like, that Gollum, they ain't done with that yet.
If they hadn't told me that season 2 was confirmed, I might have bought it. They're not really killing him because season 2's already there, and they're not going to do Picard without Patrick Stewart. That's insane.
Well, that was actually a rumor that they were going to do Picard season 2 without Patrick Stewart.
See, I don't buy that rumor. But if they had not announced season 2, I might have been tricked. I did.
I do think the actors all did really good jobs in this, and the image you've got pulled up of is it Rios talking to Seven, right?
Yes.
One of the
his
things
new
I liked
drinking
about
buddy.
Yeah, right. Well, she's about to get another drinking buddy for the denouement scene. Her new shots buddy. But anyway, one of the things I liked about this, and I thought the actors all did good jobs here, is Rios kind of wearing his heart on his sleeve and saying, that he promised he wouldn't let another captain into his heart. And
he says another hard-assed crusty old captain or something like that.
Yeah,
it's a very emotionally vulnerable scene, and something that I think in some movies would be at odds with sort of a tough guy approach, but he's also a romantic and a guy who does wear his heart on his sleeve, and I guess I appreciate his emotional candor.
Yeah. It rang true to the character because they always said like he's still like the good Starfleet officer at heart.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's a little bit of what I would think of as kind of a maudlin drunk, like he's a guy who gets sentimental probably when he's drinking, and I feel like that's the character he's been presented as.
Everyone did that when they're drinking, or maybe that's just me.
What's that?
I thought everyone did that when they're drinking.
Not everyone. Some people become assholes.
And Seven also confesses that she's got to stop killing people.
No, The first time I watched it, I was they're not really killing Picard, that most of the scenes didn't work all that well. But when I rewatched it and wasn't having to worry, is try to figure that puzzle out, I actually really enjoyed the Rios and Seven scene and the Rafi and Elnor scene. I thought both of those were some of the most beautiful parts of the entire season, honestly.
The actors behind
the first time
Elnor
I was watching it.
Oh, go ahead, Father.
The first time I was watching it, I was a little annoyed that they were drawing it out so long. But then when we got done with the Seven and Rios scene, and we went to Rafi and Elnor, and when we see Elnor walk up to Rafi, and she kind of gives him this look like, it's okay to cry, it's okay to let it go, and then he just like breaks down and starts bawling. That's when it made me cry. Like, even when I was like going through this episode, like getting screenshots for us to look at now, and I was like getting these screenshots, it made me like tear up a little bit then.
Yeah.
The first time I watched it, it did not. The second time it did. Yeah. So yeah, that's sort of the difference between expectations and sort of stuff like that.
I loved her comforting him. Like, we know that she has like this maternal instinct and has like this estranged son, and he's an orphan, so he's always looking for parent figures, like with Picard and Seven of Nine, and now with Rafi.
I have a question. I from an idea I saw on the internet in the last few days. Do you think there was a version of this script where Picard died and stayed dead, and that was the end of Picard? Picard was a one-season show.
No, because Michael Chabon said in After Trek that the plan was always, from the very beginning, to build up to the death of Picard in the last episode and then resurrect him.
Oh, okay. Because I could totally see how this would have been with a bit of a minor rewrite. This could have been the final episode, and Picard was just a one-season thing, and that's how it ends, with Picard giving his life to save all the synths. So I was kind of wondering.
Like, thematically, they really wanted to lean into the idea that he sort of had to take the leap and become other like they were, and really feel what they felt by becoming. What he had worked to protect, so that the Golem, becoming a synth, would become, was a key concept.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, it certainly plays into their Jesus motif that they're working with, and could give some interesting juice for season 2.
In the first X-Men movie, that was sort of Magneto's plot, was he was going to make everybody a mutant, so that you can't be prejudiced if you're what you would otherwise be prejudiced against.
Yeah.
Well, you can be, but that's
it's harder.
Everybody would be self-loathing.
I kind of wanted to see Riker's reaction to Picard's death.
No, I'm glad that they got Riker out of there, because they needed to just focus on this cast of characters. It would have kind of like undercut everything if they had one of the TNG people show up.
But they did have one of the TNG people show up. That's the problem.
He wasn't there during the death scene.
No, I didn't need him there for the death scene, but I did want to see him in the grieving. We show everybody else grieving. They must have called Riker and said Picard's dead, and Riker must have sat on that ship and said, well, shit, or something, and probably called Troy on the radio. She's not on board the ship, which I guess she's not.
She was scared now because she's not as brave as she used to be.
Yeah.
In Avengers Endgame, when we see the funeral, spoiler warning for Tony, you do see everybody there, and there's a few little sort of vignettes or moments with several of them, and also on the battlefield near the end. But that was the time when they were deliberately bringing together every character from the franchise. I think I fully get why they would hold off on showing Riker's reaction, or decide to show it in some other way as a conversation that would reflect it in like season 2 or at some other point, because he is not a core crew member. He's not one of the core cast, and it would have been a little distracting.
Yeah.
You'd want to save that for if you ever do actually kill Picard. That's when you bring in all the TNG people.
I suppose. Okay, if they're fair enough.
Riker would have been like, nah, he's not really dead, probably.
We get this conversation between Picard and Data in what appears to be a simulation of Picard's chateau den.
I did think that was like, oh, by the way, Data's alive and in this computer. We didn't mention that the whole time you were at this compound, but he's right over there, actually. So, I thought that was a wow.
still
I think
Okay.
they had more pressing stuff.
I wouldn't say that Data's alive because, like, if you ask Data, he's like, "Yeah, I died. I don't remember it, but I know it happened."
Yeah. So
I also thought that Brent Spiner looked good in the CGI stuff they did to his face to make him look like Star Trek Nemesis Data.
Yeah.
And I loved that his dialogue there where he says this is actually like a complex quantum simulation. It's not a dream. But then again, if you did have dreams about me, that's probably something you would dream me saying. It felt very TNG.
I liked a lot of the dialogue in this scene, and I thought it was so good actually overall that it kind of turned me around on the episode when I wasn't feeling it too well the first viewing.
Oh, nice.
When Picard just begins by saying, it's just a very dramatic line. He's like, Data, am I dead? And Data in his very matter-of-fact voice is like, yes, Captain. It was off to a good start.
Yeah.
I like that Data, because Data's wearing the uniform he had on when he blew up in Nemesis. And I like that he asked Picard, "Are you wearing the clothes you had on when you died?" These two dead TNG characters talking to each other.
Yeah.
But I guess like the real meat of this conversation is Picard, getting closure from Data's death, and Data saying, like, don't mourn me. I was glad to make that sacrifice. And you sacrifice for the sense. Do you regret that? No, I don't regret my sacrifice either.
Yeah.
It's something that Picard probably maybe intellectually knows, but it hasn't felt in his heart. And he needed, I think probably he needed to just literally see him in a lot of ways for that to sort of settle in. And he was lucky enough to get closure that many people don't.
Yeah.
I loved the very Data way he acknowledged that Picard loves him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. When he said that made up a small but significant part of his memory.
Yeah. And Picard being genuinely taken with it was a very sweet scene.
And the inspiration for so much slash fic.
But if you're a Dickard shipper, then this is like literal porn for you.
Yeah.
I guess I wasn't really familiar with that particular ship.
I just made it up, but I'm sure it's out there.
Yeah, I'm sure it's out there. I'm just guessing. But that said, I loved the way Data.
Google Star Trek /Dickard.
If you
it's
dare.
Out there. I'm not even going to Google. I'm confident that it's out there.
Yeah. I loved I make jokes, but I love the I love you. I love the way Patrick Stewart and Data and Brent Spiner reprised those roles.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful, even if I'm a little like, where Data just comes out of left field, the once he was in the room, the scene was in fact beautiful and well worth the whatever hoops you had to jump through to justify its existence.
Everyone knows that Nemesis was, echoed Wrath of Khan in many ways, but that Data's death did not have the resonance that Spock's did. And they were already doing a lot of work to repair that early on in Picard's first season here, when we saw how much it meant to him and how it had weighed on him and how willing he was to protect Daj in that first episode. By the way, I thought that Daj was going to come back. I was wrong.
I know. I didn't think that was going to happen.
But they had already started to repair that. And here we actually really finally got the closure, the tear-jerking closure that really was a next generation equivalent of the death of Spock.
It wasn't too meta, because basically in the episode they say, well, I want to die, but I want to die properly. And that's kind of what the writers are thinking too. And I enjoyed it. I love a little dash of meta, but I did notice that.
I thought of it as meta until you said that. I mean, you're completely right, but I don't think I'd thought about it that way. So I guess it wasn't too meta for me, or at least I was like too emotionally caught up to even think of that.
Yeah. I didn't catch it till the second viewing, to be fair.
It makes Nemesis better though.
Yes.
Because and we're all three people, like, none of us hate Nemesis. Like, I think it's the second best Next Generation movie, although there's not a lot of competition there, and I kind of low-key despise Generations and Insurrection.
Let's not get into ranking the next generation movies. We have different opinions.
But we're not Nemesis haters.
Yeah, and I don't think Nemesis is particularly good, but it has things that really work. It has things that really don't. I think everyone kind of feels a little bit like the way that they handle the death of Data is just kind of like a strange way to wrap up the TNG storyline. And I think this really adds a lot to that. And we do get that emotional resonance and closure with the death of a principal TNG character.
By the way, there's a train about to come by. Get ready for the good time air horn. Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry to interrupt this very emotional scene with a stupid train. There it is.
Dave lives like 2 feet away from the railroad.
That is absolutely true. It's kind of comforting at times. At other times, I just want it to derail and for everybody on it to die.
I told you when I lived next to the railroad, it would trigger my sleep paralysis. And every time a train came by and woke me up, I'd be like paralyzed in bed and hallucinating. I was attacked by demons.
Oh, dear. I'm sorry.
All right. Onward, ho.
But or just speaking about like my weird sleep paralysis for a second, like was it like a week or 2 weeks ago? Like I woke up in bed paralyzed and I saw Jason Voorhees standing at my bedroom doorway with a chainsaw and I couldn't move or scream.
That sounds terrible. Terrible.
Yeah, I've had that all my life though. It's just like a thing that happens to me. Look up sleep paralysis if you don't know what I'm talking about.
No, I'm very familiar with it, not from myself, but from a few other friends who've had it, and just knowing a little bit about it. I don't know how y'all deal with it. It's heavy stuff. It sounds really genuinely horrific.
But anyways, back to Star Trek Picard season finale. Data does request that Picard, I guess, pull the plug on him.
Yeah.
I use the term in my summary of like releasing him. And as someone who just like not a few days ago had to watch my pet be put to sleep because she was sick. I don't know. I kind of got like real life closure to that by like watching watching how it played out here, and then like
that's like the highest calling of this kind of fiction in a lot of ways is when we can find ways that it relates to us. And sometimes it's because it's something that we've all experienced, but sometimes it's because they work through metaphor or some other methodology. But I really do think that speaks to sort of the highest calling of fiction and genre fiction.
Yeah.
And it kind of rings true to like all like my own personal philosophy of like, if life is temporary, then that's what makes everything precious and gives everything its value. And things like friendships are important because they are here only for a limited amount of time. And the way that it's summed up is what does he say? A butterfly that lives forever is not really a butterfly at all.
Yeah.
This takes me back to my various hypothetical conversations I've had with people about whether they would try out immortality if they could. And I feel like at the very least,
try out immortality? Because if you still die at some point, then you weren't really immortal, so you never actually tried it.
Well, I guess you're not dealing with the scope of the scope of what it would be like. But I like to throw out the challenge of if you could essentially be immortal, but also choose to turn it off if you did want to end it. Would you try it? And I at the very least, I feel like I'm a little closer to Picard when they awaken him in a few minutes, and he's like, "You could have added 10 or 15 years."
Yeah. I say, be a man and don't be a bitch and don't fear death. But that's just me.
Try it. Say that again in your 40s, Father.
I know. Yeah, I'm kidding. But so this is the final conversation between Picard and Data, and then Picard wakes up in a tanning bed. And I thought like everyone was like staring at him naked, but he had like some like a little bikini bottom on,
like he did when he was vacationing with
on Ryza. Yeah, he needs like the robe with it. The first thing he does when they resurrect him is he drinks a cup of tea.
Yeah.
How very Picard. Do y'all think he still has a robot heart, or did they give him like a new heart?
And they catch him up on the state of things.
I think he's got a robot everything at this point, but
I guess he's all robot now.
He's flesh and blood. So
yeah.
So, I mean, here's the big question that I'm still making up my mind. Do we buy Synth Picard, Robo Picard? Is that a cool move? Is that a good move? Is that a move? Or is that a terrible, soul-crushing, what have you done to my favorite character move?
I've seen people freaking out about this. I don't think it's that weird of like the Genesis planet making a new body for Spock out of the molecules of his old body. I see like, oh, they made like a cellular copy of Picard and then made like a neural copy of his brain and put it in there. For me, it's like
in
it's
practice, they are both the same people.
Yeah.
I didn't initially think what a cool idea or this. I really am into this. When I forget who it was, one of the producers talking about it in After Trek or Ready Room.
Goldsman or Kurtzman, I think they all talked about it.
When he talked about how they wanted it, and I don't know that this metaphor like really rang completely true at the end. Father, do you remember how he put it? How he said that they needed Picard to sort of become the oppressed. Yeah.
To be like, isn't that bad? Like, look, I'll go become one.
Which means that the synth issue is got to be playing a part in season 2. Otherwise, that's kind of meaningless. Oh, well, I turned into one of the minority for the last couple of minutes of the last time we're going to treat them like a minority. So
right. Well, sometimes Star Trek actually is a little bit pat about their things, so that wouldn't be completely unusual.
For Star Trek. The time Star Trek is.
Yeah, they fix a planet and drive off.
They do a lot of good stuff here where they establish like, yeah, he doesn't have any superpowers. He is still going to die eventually. He's not immortal.
But there is that subtext that somewhere inside him is a bit of code or effectively a switch that could be thrown to change both of the answer to both of those questions.
I hope not, because I don't want to see it.
I mean, I'm not saying they'll ever flip it, but just the knowledge, like, oh, here's a scene where Picard could have saved someone if they left his android strength switched on, and he didn't save that person because they didn't leave the android strength switched on, and Picard knows that. What does that feel like to him?
I don't expect them to return to it because I don't think that's what they were interested in.
Yeah,
and I wouldn't be interested in that.
I don't want to actually see that. It's just I think it's an inherent problem with this taking Picard in this direction is that now we've got this kind of context to everything he does that is going to kind of hang over things, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure how it's going to work.
It's not going to hang over for me. I'm not even going to think about it that much. I don't think, unless they bring it up.
See, I love looking at a character's past and using that to provide context to their actions and decisions in the present. And now this is part of his past or even present. I guess
that scene, the fact that he died in quotes, I guess more than anything, ultimately meant to the episode that he was willing to, you know?
Yes.
Yeah. It didn't. Data's death had resonance. Picard's death kind of didn't.
Yeah, and now here's why it feels weird to me. It's a little different reasons from Brian, but for me, when they say like, oh, well, you're not immortal, you're still going to die from some natural cause. That kind of seems weird because like, well, he did have like this brain abnormality. Like, wasn't that kind of like his natural cause that he was going to die from? Like, it seems really weird that like they chose to resurrect him. But I can get like in the moment and like that grief and everything, people would be like, oh yeah, save him. And Dr. Soong would be like, yeah, okay, like I'll save him instead of, giving myself this cool body. What bothers me about it though is like, I wish they had explained more of like, this is like a one-time only thing. I don't like the Gollum being a possible repeatable cure for death. So I wish that they.
And again, I don't think they intend it to be. So I think just like Khan's blood and
I was about to bring that up. I hate that too. That there's a cure for death in Star Trek Into Darkness that's just ignored forever.
Yeah,
right. But I think the comics or the books have walked around it so that it's not too big a thing.
No one, to my knowledge, no one has ever addressed that and said like why that can't be used again. And that's a very important thing.
they haven't established exactly what the limits are for Khan's blood. It does seem like this particular technique, as long as your brain is reasonably intact, because we already know that it was a mess up in the brain that killed him, so it's not completely intact, reasonably intact, then we've got this technique that works. Admittedly, it sounds like it's resource intensive.
The
So
way
Dr.
that they showed
Soon
it,
had to spend a bunch of time building it. I would have thrown in a line that Data needed to be part of the process, and once they pull the plug on Data, then they can't do it again. But
yeah,
to me, because it's obvious that the writers, I don't think would want to return that. It would actually it would go against the very theme of this episode and Data's realization about what it means to be human.
I'm
almost
fine
renders
with
it like a moot, like something I don't even worry about because I know the writers don't give a shit about it.
Like the way that you were worried about the Ocarina of Time being like a weird Deus Ex Machina thing, that's how I feel about the Golem.
See, I don't think they're going to use it that way. And there's enough headcanon with only Maddox and Son of Soon working together could actually make this happen. And now Maddox is gone, and Son of Soon probably isn't going to run around doing this for every Tom, Dick, and Harry. He's going to build.
They need to fucking say that. They can't be like, we have this magic cure for death, but then not say, but it's not going to work again.
I guess
Soon's have produced. Work again.
Yeah, Soons have proven to be so wildly unpredictable and unreliable that I was like, yeah, this is not a very predictable or reliable form of bringing people back to life. I do think Dr. Soon's going to go build himself another golem because he really wanted that.
That ruins it. But something that like you can do that you can repeat. Yeah. Then, like, why aren't they sharing this with like everyone in the Federation? And they would just devote all their. It's like universe breaking if you cure death.
Disco and Picard both have a tendency to kind of not get into even the minutest sort of nitty gritty details like that. Yeah. And I do wish they would at least do a few throwaway lines.
No, that's not true. They've tried to cover their tracks on a lot of stuff. Like in season 1 of Discovery, when Stamets starts like genetically augmenting himself, and they try to like explain that, they're like, oh, like he's like going against the eugenics war laws and stuff. And like they do try to like
I guess I'd say that their explanations aren't always super weird concerns. Like you signed an NDA, so you can't talk about the Red Angel or Discovery's Spore Drive.
Yeah, which I didn't even think they needed to classify all of that stuff in there, and that really bothered me in Discovery season 2. But
I do think that they may address it more in season 2, and let's talk about the scene that's about to come up. That's a really
I did have. Do you think if they had they set up that using android brains, you can fix certain brain problems using growing things in a positronic matrix? Do you think it would have been more satisfying if they had just said, oh, Picard's dying? And like, well, yes, but we have positronic matrices. We can grow a new patch for his brain and put that in there and fix him. And it's just a little thing that we implant into his head. And it was done through the magic of synths. If you didn't have synths, you wouldn't be able to do this. And so we're still saying that, oh, look, synths are important and we should have kept them around because that's the only thing that saved Picard. But it wouldn't be quite as an extreme literal reboot of the character.
I would have liked that more. I don't need it to like not be synth Picard. But I need like the Golem thing to not be like a repeatable cure for death. Yeah. And like
Father, you and Brian know that the Golem was a thing in like Chabon's one of his earlier books.
Oh no,
but I'm not surprised that they used Golem on here because I think Chabon and Kurtzman and Akiva Goldsman are all 3 Jewish, and the Golem, comes from like Hebrew folklore.
Yep.
So I wasn't surprised.
I haven't read that book of his, but I just know that it's I think that folklore plays a major component in it.
Okay.
All right. The other thing that made me like it less and be less happy about the Robo Picard is that Robo Picard just kind of shrugs and says, okay, that's who I am now. Well, and there wasn't any sort of angst. And I get that at the end of the show, you really don't have time at the end of the season to get into that, which is why I almost wonder if it would have been better for them to be talking. You know, Girardi says, "No, come in here. We put Picard in this new android body," and Rafi and them come in and say, "Really?" And then they switch it on, and Picard's eyes open, and you roll credits. End of season. And everyone's like, "Picard's alive," but how is this all going to play out next season?
I don't want it to be a big issue, though. I want it to be like, yeah, you know how like a transporter breaks down your body and rebuilds it? That's basically what we did. You're a normal human.
I'm going to be a little disappointed if Picard doesn't have some angst about whether or not he's the same guy who saved the day all those other times on TV. I think that if I get that we needed a happy Picard. We couldn't just have Picard sitting in a room being glum or wondering who he is and then roll credits. That would have been terrible. We needed to end it on a happy note. But I think Picard opening his eyes and saying hello or whatever would have been the happy note that we could have worked with. I
would have thrown a fit if they had like a cliffhanger like that and not did something that kind of wrapped it up a bit more. Mm-hmm. But I also like, I'll be disappointed if they do have like, is Picard still the same guy or not? Because I kind of just want to move past all this. For me, it's like, yeah. So we had Spock, resurrect in Star Trek 3. They kind of deal with it a little bit in Star Trek 4, and then they just kind of forget about it for the rest of Spock. Well, that's how I want them to do with this. I'm ready to just move past it.
Well, I want
like in Star Trek 6, Spock didn't say, "I have a unique perspective as someone who's been resurrected."
Yeah, or in Unification.
Because I've been dead before, but
full aside.
But yeah, let's talk about like Data.
Okay.
And
how that's going to inspire a lot of memes, isn't it? Data in his sort of smoking jacket with his wine, looking all pimping.
This was classic Data. Like he's like preparing for his death, and
no, I love the scene. I loved it.
His imitation of humanity. Like this is him. Like this is him being like, how would a human act if they were like ready to die?
Yeah.
And he has Blue Skies on the record player. Did y'all know that this is Soji singing Blue Skies? This is actually the actress Isa Briones.
Oh, I did not know that. Very cool.
I did not know until I saw the Ready Room.
I didn't get a chance to do this week's Ready Room, so I will do it, but didn't get to
it. Oh,
it's
yet. Very good.
Picard
Go ahead, Father.
Well, yeah, they had Patrick Stewart on there. So Will Wheaton gets to interview Patrick Stewart, but it's always cool to see like the TNG cast together. But yeah, Picard has kind of like a memorial. I like that they had like this like little memorial service for Data, I guess, as they're like turning him off, and it's his brother, Dr. Soong, and his daughter, Soji, are the two that are present, and the way that Data kind of like lays back on the couch, and then when they start pulling the things out, he begins aging, but also he like hallucinates Picard in like TNG era red uniform Picard, like being there with him as he's dying.
I thought that was an interesting choice, because if you are of the opinion that Picard actually died and that Data really has a soul, which is a topic that's actually come up in the show, then is this spirit Picard coming to help spirit Data into the afterlife? I don't think that's an emphatic interpretation, but I think that was an intentional optional interpretation of that scene.
Sure. Although I don't want to speak for all these people, but something that I've noticed is kind of weird. Most people I know who believe in souls, which tend to be Judeo-Christian people, because I live in North America. But most people I know who believe in souls and watch Star Trek tell me that they don't think Data has a soul. They think that he's more just a machine, which I always found interesting. But I like again, I don't want to speak for everybody. This is something like I've heard a lot. Whereas more people with like more secular beliefs, not to say that like they're better or anything, but with them, like I do tend to hear people more like, oh yeah, Data, he's just like another person. He's just built a little differently than the rest of us.
Yeah. Brian, in the Ready Room, I believe it was actually talking about the previous scene and not this one, because I don't think Picard speaks in this sequence.
No.
This possibly
the hallucinatory Picard or whatever doesn't say anything.
Yeah. But Patrick Stewart said that it was difficult because I think he would get too choked up. it was too emotional being with Brent Spiner and saying those words and saying goodbye to him, and that they had to film the scene several times because he got too choked up.
Yeah, he couldn't say
and
the
it
line.
really spoke to the depth of the character and interaction that they've built up, both as in real life, of course, and as well as the fictional characters. But to me, it meant a lot, and I really liked seeing Picard there, however you interpret it, and I'm fine with it being a little interpretable. I think Star Trek can have that, even though it's a little more spiritual than they sometimes go. But I loved him being there to hold Data's hand.
Yeah.
And then Data, finally aging, like he said that he, wouldn't be able to do, but he ages to death, and then him and hallucinatory Picard get Thanos snapped away, and the whole dream collapses.
The fact that they both disappear at the same time in the same way also kind of points in this maybe they're both souls kind of direction, but not that I'm saying that was the only way to interpret it, but I do think that's a possible.
Yeah, I interpret it as Picard starts pulling those things out of the HDMI ports or whatever they were.
The very HAL 9000. That's how HAL 9000 died.
Yeah, it's like HAL. Like when you start pulling those cards out, the brain starts breaking down, and so that's Data is kind of losing his mental faculties, and he thinks Picard is there with him.
I was glad that the song did not slow down like they did with Daisy.
Yeah,
that Bicycle for Two.
It needed to be.
But so that brings us to our final scene on board on board La Sirena. There's no don't say the.
A big catch-up shot where in one kind of panning shot we sort of see where everyone has ended up after this, as best you can.
We open on Rios making out with Dr. Girardi. Then we pan over to 7 of 9 and Raffi doing shots and holding hands. And then we pan up to Picard, and then Elnor, I guess, walks out of the bathroom or something in the back, and they all go forward to the bridge. Picard has a conversation with Soji where she's like, "Oh yeah, there's no synth ban anymore. I'm free to wander around." And Picard says, "I am too." And they all take a seat and engage, the big catchphrase. And the La Sirena warps out to do whatever they're going to do in season 2. We have no idea.
Yeah, well, so I would have preferred a little bit of 7 of 9 saying, "What happened to all those XBs in that board cube?" And she's just screw them. I'm bored with them. They're bored.
Michael Chabon has pointed out, I do love him being so active on social media and talking to us directly, us as the fan base. But Michael Chabon said they had a lot of deleted scenes from this episode, including something to show with Narek, where he ended up, because they kind of just forget about him.
Yeah.
But also the XBs and the synths were gonna, I guess, be neighbors and live together. And the XB Ramda was gonna become the new leader of the XBs, and they were gonna have a new home here with the synth.
I honestly wouldn't mind if they sort of took some of those scenes and restrung them to have a little bit of structure between them as a short trek or something like that.
Cool.
No, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Very economical too, if you don't have to reshoot a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
A friend of mine who's bi was very taken with the revelation about 7, and
they did that before with the
I guess that's true. That's true. I guess this was just sort of a confirmation that was essentially a verbal hint, strong hint, but just a hint.
Well, that could have been a friendship handhold, but the confirmation came on Twitter from Jerry Ryan. No. She's like, yes.
Yeah, it didn't look like a friendship hand.
Dave, you wouldn't hold my hand like that as my friend?
I'd consider it. I think they didn't want to have a kiss because Rios and Girardi had just kissed, which I don't know if I completely buy that.
It would have felt repetitive.
Yeah, it would have felt repetitive.
I also don't think they'd set up that level of relationship with those two. Already the handle felt a little bit out of left field. But
what if Elnor had come out and kissed Picard?
No, what if Elnor?
Everybody gets one.
Out. Elnor came out and started making out with Soji, and then Picard is just standing there by himself. He's like, "Oh, you kids," and then that's the end.
No.
We made it horrible. Anyway,
I think there was quite enough slash fic service in this episode as there was. They should be happy with what they got.
It was a slightly pat ending, but I still found it emotionally satisfying, that final shot. And it made me very curious as to where they would like to take this in the second one.
I guess they're heading to Starbase 12 to turn over Soji to the wardens or something.
Or Dr. Girardi.
Dr. Girardi over to the police.
Yeah, I wish they would have clarified her criminal status at this point.
Yeah. But those are essentially details that wouldn't fit these big emotional beats.
I know, but they're important. They're important.
I think if they did that at the start of season 2, I'd find it acceptable. I kind of hope that they might.
For Girardi, I just need a line saying, "Okay, now that your trial is over," or whatever. Just a quick throwaway is all I need with Girardi.
Right.
And honestly, I just needed that with the XBs too. But
the mind meld was shown to be, a compelling influence, and et cetera, et cetera. What was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. As far as the finale, that final scene goes. Oh, I don't know if I fully buy that these guys would stay together as a crew. So I think they will need to come up with a good explanation for season 2.
I think one thing that they might be up to is it did sound like the
party at the vineyard.
The area that used to be the Romulan neutral zone is kind of like lawless space now. They established that in episode 4. So I think if they had them try and clean up that area, and again, that would allow them to use the Romulans more in season 2. And I do want them to be done with all of the AI stuff largely. I mean, with Soji being around, you can bring it up every now and then, but I don't want another AI story arc for season 2. I want it to be something else.
You want Picard, Fenris Ranger.
I would like to see maybe do a Fenris Ranger story for season 2 and figure out what they're all about and show us that. You have the seeds planted here.
It doesn't sound like a situation with the dramatic hook I'd want it to. We kind of already know it's lawless region. You can play around in there, and I think have him, trying to consolidate the planets there, unite them.
I'm thinking use that more as a setting, not as the story, but as the setting for the story.
I could see that. It could be a little bit tantamount to the Peter David. What was the new crew he did? Enterprise, the
New Frontier.
New Frontier.
Yeah, New Frontier. Basically, you send these characters off to a lawless region where they have to kind of, they can work a little bit more like Cisco did, making decisions on the fly without being completely under the auspices of Starfleet. They have a little bit more freewheeling possibilities.
Or I would love for them, speaking of DS9, if they just went and visited DS9 and rebuilt those sets, I would love that.
It can't become a station-based show, Father.
No, but they can visit a station.
They could visit, yes. That's not a premise for a season. That's a premise for a scene or an episode.
Pretty much every Star Trek show has visited a space station at some point, except for Voyager.
Have they visited a space station? I don't know. Isn't that what Free Cloud was?
No, that was a planet.
Okay, whatever. Anyway, I hope DS9 shows up too.
Yeah.
Now, do y'all have any quick final thoughts on this episode?
I guess to get the things I didn't like, we never found out what Soji's mission is that she has apparently completed, and I'm kind of scared we're never going to now because she's done with it.
I thought we talked about that last week.
Well, we came up with some theories, but they never put it in the episode. And so we're just guessing. Also, a third of the episodes in this season promised us the Borg are coming and they're going to kick ass.
Yeah.
The Borg did nothing all season long except talk a talk and never walk the walk.
I need that cube to show up again.
Never got to do shit.
Yeah. And if they hadn't kept building it up here come the Borg, if they hadn't kept doing that, I would have been fine with the Borg not being a big kicking ass. But since they kept promising it and never delivering it over and over and over,
you're kind
of annoyed. That the other thing I loved about this episode is that they end it not with a giant space battle. Yeah, we shoot some flowers, but that's about it. And they're completely non-sapient, clearly inanimate flowers. We solve this with Picard's speech and talking and working out our problems and trust. And it's like after all of this and after seeing 2 seasons of Discovery that tended to be awfully violent, having a solution, the end be a classic Picard type solution to all of this problems. I really, really enjoyed and appreciated that ending, that they didn't pull the trigger, did not have the huge space battle between Starfleet and the Romulans. And they thought about doing it. Yeah. Though as it turns out, they ran out of special effects time. So it's just as well they didn't. But
I was glad. I agree with you. I'm very glad it didn't come down to a battle.
Yeah, I was surprised that they did that. I thought it was kind of bold. And I applaud that creative choice.
Yeah. And instead of going shooty, they spent the last episode going deep and coming up with some of the best analysis of ideas and philosophy and ethics that we've seen in the whole season was there at the end. They saved that for that for the last. And that took some guts because, too cerebral and all that. So
Speaking of ethics, I think the lingering issue I had as far as the synth storyline and the meta plot involving the alien, or that is to say the synth overlords, was that as far as the synths of Coppelius went, that the story kind of amounted to what I think was kind of a trite story that Trek's already explored several situations. Probably the Bajorans, I feel like, was one of the bigger uses of it. Hey, you slaves, if you were to rise up and kill your oppressors, you'd be just as bad as they said you were. And I think that's almost an immoral message, or could be, depending on how you exactly interpret what they showed in this episode. But I did not like that final plot point, that there was just Picard trying to talk Soji down from being a vengeful slave, essentially. I did not like it.
Yeah, I can see that. Although I would say in defense of the show, they took the time to show her, justifications for their grievances.
Right. But in the end, Picard was not talking about, he was not saying things like, you would be justified in doing this, but I hope you won't. I hope you'll consider this. He said, don't become the monster they say you are. And that's kind of gross.
She's not just threatening to kill her slave master. She's threatening to kill everybody in the galaxy. So the
right. And I think if they had a somewhat more nuanced conversation about that, I would have been more interested in it.
Yeah.
But it felt like what used to be done is done in one episode in Star Trek, and it did not feel like a deep culmination of things of like a what is it, 10, 12 episode season?
Wasn't that was in the Black Panther movie, Killmonger's plan is that he's going to blow up all of the world outside of Africa.
Yeah.
And so it was I
think maybe it was just handled better there.
Yeah. But I don't really have anything to add to this episode. Like I said, I was largely satisfied, although I had several complaints mainly with this episode in particular. But I feel like we covered all of those along the way. So this is actually officially at this point in time, I don't know if I'm going to trim any of this down for the audio only version of the podcast, but we're currently the longest running Tex-Trek podcast ever.
It's episode 100.
Episode.
It is episode 100. So it's like a double stuffed Oreo. It's more than you typically get. I'm going to run through the Gorn eggs real quickly. The first one being the Vulcan prehistory that Narek mentions. That idea that Vulcan might have been colonized, Brian mentioned, and for some reason right now, I guess I'm a little tired, I'm blinking on the name of that episode, where they have like all of the spheres.
It's the Sargon was kind of the leader of the group, and they called them Sargon's people because they never got a proper name in the episode.
No, but what was the name of the episode? Something about yesterday.
Yeah, it was it was the yesterday one that wasn't time travel. It had one of those titles.
All Our Yesterdays?
Yeah. I don't know.
Was it the TOS episode or TNG?
Oh, TOS.
TOS.
Yeah.
Is this All Our Yesterdays?
Or was that the one where Spock is in the cave eating meat?
One of y'all would know better than I.
Shit. This is embarrassing. I'm typically pretty good on these. I think it is All Our Yesterdays.
Move on.
Return to tomorrow.
Return to tomorrow, yeah.
I looked it up. I'm not going to take credit for that. But
Okay. So that was from Return to Tomorrow. The term Ganmadon, or like the Romulan Ragnarok, that was actually mentioned before when in a previous episode, Soji and Narek were talking about Ramda and how she was a mythology expert, even though Romulans don't have mythology. And Narek asked, "Oh, how do you know about Ramda?" And she said, "Oh, I saw her on the talk show that was it was a super Romulan sounding Yermanur, I think is how she pronounced it." But yeah, I saw her on the talk show Yermanur talking about Ganmadon. So now we know what Ganmadon is. When Picard and Dr. Girardi are on La Serena, I remember not to say the. When they're on La Serena, Girardi says, "Make it so." So I can finally check off on my bingo card all three catchphrases. We had the Earl Grey hot, we had the engage, and now we had "make it so." The Tal Shiar fleet destroying an entire planet was actually a Tal Shiar tactic we saw in the Deep Space Nine episode, "The Die is Cast."
Yes.
I wonder what planetary destruct pattern they used. Was it 1,
I don't
3,
think it
5?
was 5. I think they used pattern 47. At least that's the one I hope they used.
I am kind of scared that they have 47 different ways to sterilize a planet. That's
the Tal Shiar. I'm sure
that seems a little overkill. That means they've sterilized at least 47 planets.
Paul Simon wrote that song 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover, so Tal Shiar have their focus.
Also, when Picard is talking about the ancient warplanes, the use of the term ancient in Star Trek kind of has a different meaning than it has now. Like in the Trelane episode, the Squire of Gothos, Picard is like referring to like an ancient setting, even though it's like, okay, it was like 1400 and you're in like the 2300s, that's like 900 years, so it's not quite ancient. And then like in TNG when they see things like the ancient West, when they're talking about like the old West. So I like to like, yeah, anything that's like from like modern day or older in Star Trek, they call ancient.
Yeah, I think that's one of those slightly sci-fi conventions. It's kind of fun to refer to our time as ancient.
Like they would say like this is an ancient form of communication.
Yeah. One of the old Earth 21st century podcast formats.
Yeah. And the Zhang He ship that Riker is on, Zhang He was a Chinese admiral. Also, Riker mentions the Treaty of Algeron, which I think was first brought up in the TNG episode, The Defector.
Yeah, sounds right. It's one of those TNGs.
Yeah. They also bring it up in the Pegasus episodes where the Federation wasn't supposed to use cloaking devices. But yeah, that was some old agreement between the Romulans and the Federation. And then Picard choosing to be the one to put down Data, whatever you want to call it. That kind of echoed in Star Trek Insurrection when he told Admiral Doherty that I should be the one to do it. I'm his captain. When he wanted to send someone to kill Data.
That will have a different resonance next time I watch Insurrection.
So what I derive from this is Picard has been aching to kill Data for decades.
It's just a dutiful thing that a captain has to do sometimes.
Yeah, it's in the book.
Picard, during that Data ceremony of unplugging the HDMI ports, he says, "We are such stuff that dreams are made of," which is a quote from the Shakespeare play The Tempest, right? Mm-hmm. Dave is the Shakespeare nut.
It's Prospero's kind of outro. That's in one of those scenes where where the players are all presumably come onto the stage and you're talking to the audience and you're doing, in Midsummer Night's Dream, it would be the, if we spirits have offended sequence. Prospero, of course, is kind of a meta character in The Tempest. He's a lot of people, or there's a belief that Shakespeare himself may have played him. He's, this ancient wizard who's kind of trying to put things behind him. So it's and it kind of works on, it's the end of the play. It's, also refers, of course, he's talking about the end of a life. but I kind of Patrick Stewart, I'm sure has played Prospero at some point and is a Shakespearean actor, of course. But it also fits the Prospero as this kind of grand. I was about to say grand wizard. That has a different connotation. Yeah. But he is it's the kind of character that was uniquely suited to both Patrick Stewart and Picard. So it's kind of a neat meta thing.
Very cool. And then the last Easter egg that I found in the episode was when we see 7 of 9 being bisexual with Raffi. Not as dirty as it sounds. They're just holding hands. But it looks like they were also playing Calto, the Vulcan game established in Voyager. They pointed out in Voyager that 7 was pretty good at that.
Oh, okay.
So,
I was wondering. I was like, none of the Vulcanoids are playing Calto. It's because
he's about to wreck. She's about to wreck Raffi.
In more ways than one. Slash fiction writer to work on that. This had a lot of slash fiction fuel. All of those writers are currently hammering away with one hand on the keyboard and one hand somewhere else.
Well, dear, Chabon probably got his start writing slash fic, So.
But that's everything I saw in this episode. Of course, if you caught anything I didn't, be sure to let me know. You can let us know on our Facebook page or holler at me on Twitter at Tex-Trek, or you can also comment on YouTube. And if you have any feelings about this episode or this season of Star Trek, when we meet next, coming up on Sunday, we'll be discussing season 1 of Star Trek Picard overall. And we'll definitely want to share people's feedback. If you have any comments about the season you want to leave us, we'll try to make time to share some of those. And that's everything I have. Just want to say thank you to everyone for sticking around and listening to us for 100 podcasts. And it's been a lot of fun talking about Star Trek Picard. I don't know when we're going to get it, but we do have Lower Decks and Discovery sometime later this year. I think they're going to be delayed because of the current COVID-19 pandemic. I don't think they're going to be able to finish the post-production on Discovery on schedule, and I don't know how it's going to affect Lower Decks.
Yeah, they clearly run a more up-to-the-edge post-production schedule than I thought they did. Having
although actually, like the Lower Decks showrunner Mike McMahon said, like they're already doing a lot of work remotely, so it is possible like we get Lower Decks finished before Discovery. I don't know. What I do know is that whenever these shows are out, we will be here to talk about them with y'all. And we have other stuff to talk about in the meantime. So starting next week when we discuss Picard Season 1. So please stick around and continue to be part of the conversation with us. I will go ahead and sign us off now. Thanks again. And until next time, live long and prosper, y'all.